Gamers, friends, thank you all for waiting patiently as we resolve some technical difficulties getting in. I want to thank you for coming to GBAMFS first roundtable. We have with us presently Sid Alpha, we have Nasmer, and we have T-Man. Also, Mello will be joining us momentarily. Sid is a journalist, gaming commentator, and has a track record of essays and other work that he's done in the gaming space. Also on X. Nasmer is an X and YouTube personality, does gaming commentary. Sid, I should say T-Man. T-Man, you are a proprietor. You have a tea store and also comment on issues in the gaming space. You are an anime reviewer, and so those are the brief descriptions. Um, Mello is a Steam Sentinel. He's the leader of the Steam Sentinels. Basically, they're a group that looks for any kind of bad practices in the Steam platform, Steam store, and if there's scam games there, anything like that, they handle it. They report it, and I've collabed with him previously, and he'll be along shortly. Um, so I'd like to jump right in.
He is present.
Okay, great. We do have. I just want to make sure people can see the stream here. So if you can do let us know, much appreciated. Um, all right, and so let me make sure that Mello can join us here. Be just one moment.
Oh, can you not hear him?
Mello,
I
are
am here. Hello.
Mello
Hello.
is here.
all right. All right. So I don't think we're getting a picture here, but you're yeah.
Can
If you want to
can
update
you
that,
hear
that's
me?
fine. I could definitely hear you. We could all hear you.
Okay. Yes.
All right,
He's
great,
now on stream. There we go.
fantastic. Okay, so if anyone in chat can confirm the audio is good, we should be fantastic. Okay, appreciate you, Dark Linux, and yeah, I appreciate everybody here. It's been patiently waiting. Let's jump right in. All right, let's get started. I am Jdawg of GBAMFS. Our group is a consumer advocacy group, gamer advocacy group. That's the short description. There's more on our website. Please do take a look. There's a lot there, and we'll go ahead and get started. So for the first topic we have here, we're looking at the just let me get my notes. We're looking at the general direction of the industry. Um, what do you all think? Are we in an upturn? Are we is it sustaining? Are we looking is gaming looking at a downturn? I think the data speaks for itself. What say you? Whoever wants to
that's
jump in.
that's an interesting one to answer. I think it's going in both extremes at the same time, where the good stuff and the better stuff is getting better and better, but the bad stuff is getting worse and worse. And I think it's leaning a little bit more towards the worse and worse side, unfortunately. But there is still the better stuff that's there for us to look at.
Very fairly stated. Yeah, there's it's a bit, kind of a best of times, worst of times, a little bit scenario there. I'd absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. There's bright spot is in the indies, okay, but AAA big issues there. I think we could probably we have some broad agreement on that point.
Specifically, Western AAA.
Absolutely, absolutely. How anyone else wanna comment on the point before we dig in on that?
Yeah, pretty much. I can agree that at least in the indie market, games have been doing phenomenally well, better than ever. Difficulty is in the AAA market, not so much, especially within the past year alone. We've seen so many AAA games just outright fail out of the gate. We have your Veil Guards, your Concords, and all of those. Even Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is doing fine, but that's Ubisoft. That's a whole other thing right there. They're always middle of the road with pretty much everything. Um, the AAA market has seen a significant downtrend in this year alone, in the past year, mostly I think potentially due to loss of key figures and personnel as they get cycled off for new members.
Fair to say. So something of a generational change, or would you say it's more prompted by moves in the in the industry or labor market?
A combination of all of the above, I think. I mean, obviously during COVID and the lockdowns, gaming saw, along with most everything digital, saw an extensive boom, and the gaming industry tended to treat that as if that upward trend would just continue to rise, even though realistically that was never going to happen. As someone is
That's
banging
some
away
strong
loudly on their
typing there.
keyboard.
Strong typing there. Yeah. I hear you, Sid.
And so
That's
now they're going through a bit of a fall off and a retraction
mhm.
as they readjust to what standards are normally like without dealing with everyone being locked in their homes 24/7.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. No, there was something of a captive market there. Definitely distorted the shape of the market, right? The scope of it to not standard levels, right, of playership and that sort of thing. And so there is definitely an element of correction going on. Yes, it is a market correction, but the question there really is, do the trends we're seeing, and we do have some data on that, are the trends we're seeing, is it a result of that correction in the curve, or is it related to issues with the product, with the
It's a
marketing?
contributing factor at the very least, because along with that, we see massive amounts of layoffs and studio closures, and people shuffling in the industry from one company to another and starting over new positions. And the turn rate for game developers right now is incredibly high, and part of that I believe, has also contributed to a lack of direction and a lack of focus, especially in the AAA sphere. Less so with smaller teams like your double A's or your indies, but it seems that the more massive a company gets, the more difficult a time they have holding things together.
Yes, yeah, this I definitely agree with you that scale is a factor. I think scale has become a big issue. Yeah, just looking at the history of it. Anyone else want to comment on that point as far
Uh,
as scale factoring in?
with the scale, the overall state of the corporations generally, in terms, we'll get into it a bit more as we go on. I think that they're quite stable at the moment, if not gaining. So, not accusing Sid of this, but generally, people online who keep doomsaying of a video game crash, I just don't see it coming. I just don't see it coming. So we'll
I'm going
look.
to be honest with you, I don't see it coming either.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
really don't.
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. It's a fair
My
point. It's a fair point. Go ahead.
my main issue is, even if they downsize and pull back and try and refocus, would they refocus into something that's still enjoyable? So, out of all the various different examples, let's take Dragon Age to Veilguard. Even if they like pull back and refocus and retry, are they going to learn from the lessons of, for example, the meme? So I'm non-binary. Like, are they going to be able to learn from those lessons and how everyone made fun of it, or are they going to just double down, try it again, but now
Hmm.
with a smaller studio, because that's what the problem was.
Right.
I think the answer to that would be something along the lines of short answer yes, long answer no. Because obviously corporations are always in the business to make money. That's their main goal. That's their objective. So if they're producing content that does not make money, they're going to figure out what went wrong, and they're going to try and adapt to make a product that people will at least purchase and utilize.
Hmm.
Um, Long answer no is Dragon games like Dragon Age Veilguard and things like that are a very special case because they rely so heavily on the narrative and the writing. And unfortunately, BioWare's best writers have departed long ago. And so basically they have what's left over are new people in the former B team. And so with that, I don't think BioWare's writing talent is nowhere near what it once was. And that's something that you can't learn and grow from. Either you're a talented writer or you're not. Until they find someone who's capable of delivering meaningful writing, BioWare will always have that. But again, that's a bit of a special case because they've always relied on their narrative for their games. It's not so for most other companies.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well, I think part of it is that, like obviously to corporatize it a lot more, they are wanting to produce games that will generate a lot of revenue, but they want to try and put them up together as cheaply as possible. They don't want to spend more costs than what's necessary. So they will probably cut corners in terms of production avenues. That's why obviously there's loads of layoffs happening as well of, like you mentioned, say, key staff that made the companies what they are today. And I think if that just keeps on continuing, you are just going to see a more gradual decline in game quality. I mean, like me personally, I've barely touched many AAA games that have been released. I'd probably even say close to the last decade even. I kind of lost a lot of interest when the heavier monetization practices started to be rolled out, your loot box kinds, and it just became so engulfed in the culture that it just totally it was toxic. It toxified something that I used to really enjoy. That's why I kind of went to the more indie gaming market. So no, I don't particularly see much of an improvement, especially in the cost of living background that we're in as well.
Definitely.
Very, very, very good points here. Very fair. All those definitely strike me as factors as well. I think all of that is actually worth delving into individually as topics. I think I might want to move to the next kind of area here, which is kind of ties in with that because we see the trends in Western development. Principally, what we're discussing is our Western firms as examples. And there's generational factors, there's economic factors that all go into it. What say you of the innovations in the East, Eastern development, Japan, China, newly, significantly? Do you see that as what role do you see that as playing in this change? Are they is the strength of their product just that good, or is the Western market falling down? Which do you think, or is it both?
Well, I think that the impact they have been having and will continue to have has been significant, and part of that is it's not through anything truly outstanding or groundbreaking in any way. I think it's more for a lot of people that especially with the quality of AAA games that have been coming out recently, these studios have been concentrating more on making flashier versions of games that they'd already been putting out for a long time, where they focus on solid gameplay and solid mechanics and focusing more on allowing people to actually enjoy the games that they're making. And that's one of the numerous reasons why so many people seem to be gravitating more towards the Eastern market right now than the Western. I think.
There's a funny thing which a lot of people, it's something which when you tell people they know it, but when they're just going by their day-to-day business they don't know it, which is a lot of the stuff which they loved back in the day, like Zelda, Mario, Sonic, etc. Those are not Western, those are Eastern. They came from the East.
It's true.
Right.
And those guys are still going strong. I can't think of anything that's from 90s to 2010s that was made in the West that is still going strong now. Lord of Craft, she kind of fell off because the last couple of games, from what I've played, I've not played the last couple of games. They've not really captured her spirits. Duke Nukem is dead. Doom guy, he's still going strong, so that's
a rough
one thing.
Miss Duke.
Yeah.
Duke needs to make a comeback.
And so they've maintained a nice steady increase of what they're doing, and two, we're getting new stuff as well. Black Myth Wukong came out, that was amazing. Tides of Annihilation is looking good. Wu Chang Fallen Brothers is another one that's looking good. So there's things that we can look forward to. For the West, we had Baldur's Gate 3, that's good.
actually replaying that right now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
I
good
still got to
game.
finish that. I'm still like halfway through Act 3, and I still need to just finish that last little bit.
Definitely solid titles. I think the biggest takeaway, in contrast, as looking at the Eastern dev versus West, is the durability, the evident durability and care or curation kind of goes hand in hand, in my view, of the IP. I think that's the biggest distinction, apart from even the generational change and the economic things that distortion that went into the whole COVID bump. We might be having a little bit of a post-COVID bust in areas. The Eastern IP, the companies, the IP holders, they really do take a much they take a much higher standard of care for their intellectual property, I believe, and that's something when we come to something like Veilguard, many entertainment properties, broadly speaking, but in video games specifically, something like Dragon Age, the legacy is not really, it's not really reflected in the modern development, I'd say, and that kind of robs the IP of the chance to shine. It takes away from the innate value of the intellectual property, and the shareholders feel that. The Western companies, I think, are suffering from somewhere of something of a mission creep or a shift of focus away from the fundamentals.
I think
The
it would
core
be more of a
fundamentals.
contraction. Because this sort of tails back into a point that Mello made earlier, where they're trying to do less but get more. Whereas the Eastern markets, they tend to build on the foundation of what they already know how to do well. Meanwhile, over here, we've got companies that are trying to scale back the amount of content they actually provide within their games, and are still charging the same or trying to hike the prices on what they're providing. And so you're paying more for lesser experiences, whereas with Eastern games that's very much not the case.
If I can also just hop in and just not necessarily make a counterpoint, but maybe something to also consider, because obviously I know a lot of the conversation we're having is more down to the AAA sphere in the eastern side. When I kind of think of the AA or even the indie sphere in like Japan and China, there's a lot that are populated by visual novels in particular, and obviously there's loads of visual novels that get released onto Steam on the daily.
True.
And at least when I think of visual novels, I see them as being something that's quite quick to produce, that's something that is done quite cheap as well, but have also stuff that are very, very profitable because they've got a very, very wide-reaching market as well. So to me, that's still very much a parallel that I can draw in a negative light between the East and the West. Whether that was a manifestation one way or the other, I'm not sure where that started from, though.
There is also one other aspect that not many people really think about. So I'm a guy who loves a lot about pre-Kami China, and so I know a lot of the stories, the tales, the lore, the mythology. Over in the West, with all the various types of RPGs we've done, there's still basically offshoots of Tolkien, more or less. Like here is an elf, here is a different version of an elf, here's a dwarf, a different version of a dwarf, things along those lines. It's a lot of story beats that we have seen time and time again. There is a lot of mythology in China that we just do not really know about because, well, China's couldn't state. And so if they can start breaking out with more stories like Black Myth Wukong, what they did with that, because I knew the story of Wukong and Journey to the West beforehand. And so for me, that was an amazing experience from someone who actually knows the story and the background to it. And I think as more time goes on, as more people learn about the stuff, more games are developed with a whole different set of, let's say, creatures or story beats or things along those lines, they're gonna get that feeling of discovering something new, which a lot of people have talked about how things just feel regurgitated, things are the same, it's just repetition, remakes, etc., etc. So I think the East has a really good chance to break away from that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword for me, because on one hand, you've got a lot of people from the West saying that the East needs to take over gaming, but at the same time, for every Black Myth Wukong, you've got there's a bit of a cultural mentality divide here. Whereas in the West, you see a lot of people focus on fairness and balance in gameplay. Over in the East, there is quite a lot of, well, why wouldn't I pay for an advantage? Which is why you see Eastern games with MMOs having pay to win, or you see something like The First Descendant, which had, I believe, enough microtransactions and storefronts to make Battlefront 2 blush. So there is definitely a balance to be had rather than just going all in on the Eastern markets.
No, I think it would be foolish to go all in on either market.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Surely.
But like I'm saying, you do see like some people online saying, the East should just take over gaming, and I'm like, well, hold your horses, buddy.
It is
A
definitely
lot of those
issue.
are saying that are focusing more on the fact that in Eastern video games, the women are hotter.
That works. That's enough. I mean, I think the creative side we'll get into in our next segment as to what the factors are, but that's definitely one of them. Western developers were not afraid to be creatively, provocative in the past, and also to maintain the theme of their IPs. And neither of those things is very consistent now, so that's got to be part of it. All right, let's take a look here at our next topic area. And it kind of dovetails with what we've already been addressing. Basically, I'd like you all to each take a turn, pick out specific examples in terms of corporate actors that you'd like to focus on, say a few words on, and we can kind of go into it, address each one at a time. So for me, I'm probably gonna say Ubi. T-Man.
For me, my opinion is not going to be as strong with it because I don't follow specific, what's the word I'm looking for, publishers as closely as other people.
Okay.
But for me, Koei Tecmo for the past 6 months or so has really impressed me with what they've done. They're the ones who produced the Dynasty Warrior series. And the previous one, Dynasty Warriors 9, ended up being one of the worst reviewed ones in the series. They tried something new and it just backfired spectacularly. It was awful. And so a couple of months ago, they released Dynasty Warriors Origins, which is they completely redid the formula. Well, completely is the wrong word, but they redid it. They kept the core essence of what it is, but changed so much around that it became one of the better games that I've played, especially this year. At the same time, they also released a roguelite type of game called Warriors Abyss, which takes the old school Dynasty Warriors and turns it into basically a really fun button masher.
Okay.
And both of those games, yeah.
T-Man, let me stop you on that. I think you're anticipating our next segment. The reason I say Ubi is I was going to ask for everyone to kind of share an example of a particularly like a market shift in a company's kind of outlook in the case of Ubi. I think we'll get more into the specifics on games, on products, in a bit.
Oh, actually, I was going to get you that. Now I'll just wrap it up and go to this. So Koei had a bad history of monetizing the hell out of all of these franchises. Where if you get a Dynasty Warriors game, you'll pay for the base game, and then there'll be like $600 worth of DLC of all these various things. For Dynasty Warriors Origins, no DLC so far, not at all. They just have a full, complete game that I'm 112 hours in, and I'm still not 100%. Warriors Abyss only costs like $30, but I've got many hours in that as well, and it's so good it makes me almost want to buy the DLC, but it's a little bit pricey, so I'm gonna wait for the sale.
Okay.
And so they've improved in that sense, where they're no longer trying to just ham fist you and just take all the money that they can.
Definitely, the differing strategies really informs, I think, the profitability and the enduring value of IPs. So if they're doing it right, I mean, keep doing it right. So I think I'm just gonna jump. We'll jump right into Ubi as an example because that's kind of the flagship going down by the head right now. I don't think there's a. Some people have differing views on it. Some people, no doubt, perhaps in the comments will let us know that it's doing great actually. But I think that remains to be seen. I think we need more data on that. So Sid, what say you?
In regards to companies or corporations that, who would
Yeah,
I
the
suppose,
biggest movers up or down, and then we could discuss them basically.
well, obviously that would 100% be Ubisoft, on the way down,
Yeah.
for sure. They don't have any. I don't think they have much hope of recovering anytime soon. Um, most other corporations seem to be just doing the usual corporate things that they tend to always do.
Well, that's that's incisive commentary. Not that I'm disagreeing. Yeah, the gaming industry. A lot of it is there's a good amount of inertia. There was inertia coming out of 2012. There's a good amount still in it and going now. Um, Nasmer, do you have any comment on this?
Yeah, well, outside of Ubi, I would say Warner Brothers. The Warner Brothers games side of things has just had such horrendous management and wasted potential with things that they have, like the Nemesis system. They never really utilized it, and
Ah,
look at them now.
Hmm.
God, what a
And
stupid thing to do. Just
Mm.
leave such a good system in just one game.
yep.
Awful.
Yeah.
I thought of it just now, another potential example looking into the future. Um, so for the last two releases of FromSoft, the new Elden Ring Night's Veil, whatever it is, and then the Nintendo exclusive, what was it, Dusk Bloods?
Yeah.
Whatever
Dusk
its title
Bloods,
was.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, they're both moving away from the PV, or from just the single player way, and they're very PvP focused, which is hopefully not going to be a trend. If it is, that's going to be an awful move. It's just going to be awful. But hopefully, it's just a two off, and they go back to the usual focus on single player with multiplayer if you want to deal with that
Yeah.
aspect. Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure that with FromSoft, I think that is a that shift. I believe I don't believe there was ever any confirmation on it, but there was at least whispers that that was a mandate that was handed down to them.
Well, I've not heard about that. Who would hand down that mandate?
To be perfectly honest, I recall so little of it because it was a while ago, and there was nothing really to confirm that at all. But it wouldn't surprise me.
No, that's that kind of thing is it cannot be placed beyond doubt in modern game development. Yeah, there's a lot of factors just beyond the creative's initiative, as in the earlier days, that go into it, and the regulatory picture, the finance picture, and it is an increasingly connected and globalized world. So I mean, there's look when video games came out, and I was there for it. Not the very earliest stuff, but pretty early. I think many of us were. There's no cell phones in the hand. All right, that's there's that, and yeah, I mean that's the dial-up was dial-up. So, yeah, the evolution of the whole feedback loop of retail, the retail cycle, um, just absolutely epic. Um, but it doesn't explain all the trends, right? There's lots of things that go into it. Just the evolution of the technology is one underlying factor. So let me ask as far as I think Ubi we all recognize is the big mover in the wrong direction. Uh, what
It, it, sorry,
Go
if I
ahead,
could just hop in because I was also going to talk about Ubisoft a little bit
Mello,
because
please.
I was thinking for a little while that
Okay.
they were heading in the wrong direction, especially in the lead up to Assassin's Creed Shadows, because I just think those Assassin's Creed games are just incredibly cookie cutter and are just
Mm.
so derivative of each other. They don't really want to do. The last good one I think was Black Flag, because they at least bothered to innovate quite substantially with that one. But
Right.
when Shadows came out and then they had that news of the Tencent investment not too long ago, I think that's going to put the company on a relatively good standard, at least on the front that it can effectively continue operation going forward. Because obviously there was conversations that they'd had so many flops over the last 3-4 years that there was even talks of the company was going to be able to last much longer. But
Well,
when
it
they've had
was
an
a
investment come in, that I think that will at least make the company survive, put it that way.
It will. Unfortunately, that also, for all intents and purposes, put all of Ubisoft's primary intellectual properties into the new subdivision company that Tencent now has a massive stake in. And I do know that the shareholders for Ubisoft are exceptionally displeased, and they're trying to prevent that move. Even though Ubisoft basically needs Tencent's money to be able to survive, the shareholders really don't want to give up the control they have over those IPs.
I mean, I think the way I look
As well
at it
they
as
shouldn't.
well,
As well they shouldn't. Their flagship,
I,
in
I
my
think
opinion.
I think it's fair, but I also think at the end of the day, it's the players that are playing those games that will see any influence that those decisions will have, and I think
True.
that time will tell what influence Tencent and those subsidiaries will have on the output. But I mean, if you ask me, if they actually bother to innovate, then even if it's a extreme move in the wrong direction, I'm thinking, well, you know what? At least they tried something. At least they tried something. At least they attempted to be bold.
Yeah, that's a fair point, especially with how you said how cookie cutter Assassin's Creed games are. And it's not just Assassin's Creed games. They seem to have a specific static formula that they use for all of their games that they adhere to religiously. So who knows? Maybe Tencent will get them to shake out of that, and good or bad, at least, yeah, I agree with you. At least there would be some form of change there.
That makes me think of something. So EA, the sports games like EA Madden 23, 24, they're notorious for just being copy paste to the point where sometimes you would buy, like, let's say, I think the best example was in Madden 20. They still had signs up that said like Madden 2019 or Finals 2019 all over the
Mm-hmm.
place. Do you guys think, because I have not played an Ubisoft game in like since 2018, they do the same thing here where they actually just take what they're doing, copy paste, and then just change the icons?
Well, for a
No,
while with Assassin's Creed in particular, I know with the new, when they had that total like refresh, I believe it was Odyssey, they kind of shifted focus from being more stealth-based assassin, and it became kind of more action orientated. Some people use RPG mechanics. I just use progression mechanics where you're just leveling up and getting more better gear so that you can fight quote unquote harder enemies, which just means they deal more damage and have more health. And that you kind of saw that then become the boilerplate, just like with Call of Duty 2019, where they had a whole new engine come in. And then that just became the boilerplate with Modern Warfare 2, the World War II one, and Modern Warfare 3. So yeah, it would be that kind of case in Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed games. They have kind of moved away a little bit from the one that everyone clowns them on, which is you have to climb 600 towers to unlock the map. I think they did learn their lesson there.
I would probably say, in response to your question, T-Man, yes, but not in a Madden way, if you get what I mean. So Madden and EA Sports, and even the 2K games like NBA, they change much less than what Ubisoft do. I will give them that. At least Ubisoft give you a new world to explore, and they give you some semblance of deeply rooted like lore in the games. I think there is more effort put into those than in your rudimentary sports games, but I think the sports games are the most bottom of the barrel that you can probably get in terms of both rudimentary game design and also predatory practices as well, because they
Very
only
true.
require on a top 5% of players spending loads and loads of money that they then become profitable. So they don't really, they've learned, going back to an early point, they've learned that they don't need to put in a lot of effort. They can just put in the bare minimum and just copy over what they did last year, and then maybe slightly make the graphics slightly better, slightly change the roster, make it up to date so that you've got current players. So yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I think Nazma's right that it is Ubisoft's version of that, but I wouldn't necessarily do it in a comparison sense because I think it would maybe be doing Ubisoft a disservice.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
And so, with the follow up on that, do you think after all of the fiasco with Assassin's Creed Shadows, did they learn any type of lesson going forward, or are they just gonna stay the course?
No.
What? Sorry,
Good question.
wait,
Good
what?
question.
Sorry, what fiasco in particular, in specifically?
I think the figures they're not out on the Shadows the Assassin's Creed Shadows game, but there has been indications that it's underperformed sale wise, and so assuming that that prompted any kind of movement, certainly they've reorganized very rapidly in the wake of the release. Is there a lesson to be learned there, and if so, what would those lessons be?
I mean, I've got some mixed opinions on that because I mean, like you say, the sales figures aren't out. The announcements that I did see coming through, they were selling quite fast in the initial few days. I don't know if maybe the sales stagnated after that point or what. But again, we'll see what the sales figures say. But I was on X the other day and I saw some people talking about Tencent acquisition in particular, saying that it was as a result of Shadows underperforming. And that's just not how that kind of thing works. That talk will have been in place for months beforehand. It's not something that just gets brought up in the span of 2 days.
Yeah, typically at least a year or more in advance.
So
Do you think it would have been a factor in the decision? And anyone else want to jump in here on this?
No, I think that decision would have been made well beforehand. I mean, when talks for that would have started, Assassin's Creed Shadows would have still been on course and on track at that point in time. They wouldn't even had to delay it yet. One thing is, Ubisoft is extremely top heavy. They have more employees on staff than any other two AAA corporations combined. They have over 19,000, although I think they're getting close to 18,000 now because they closed the studio and have been doing some layoffs.
Yeah, there's been definite
but they also
downsizing.
carry with them a lot of debt.
Mm-hmm.
And that debt has been a problem that's been hanging over their heads for a long time, and it hasn't been improving. So I think they use that to leverage the deal that they've been making with Tencent to get out from underneath that to the best of their ability, even if it ends up costing them partial control of their flagship IPs.
Yeah.
The Assassin's Creed Shadows certainly didn't help things in that regard, especially with the controversy after controversy that came of it, and the sheer amount that they've angered the Japanese player base and even the Japanese government to a certain extent. Yeah, certainly didn't help things, and if anything, probably would have spurred them on to be more resolved at finalizing that deal.
Yeah.
Don't we have a bunch of figures on the debts and whatnots?
The
So
debt
we can know
is currently 2.71 billion as of last year. The revenue, or the earnings, is 200 million last year. The cash on hand is 1.3 billion. They're in a bad spot. They're kind of unique in that case. From my first point about overall the market's quite healthy in gaming, they're a bit one of the outliers.
Sure. Circling back to one of the earlier points regarding the overall outlook, the health of the industry, I just wanted to opine on that. While I don't see any kind of large downward trend, I don't see a big upward trend. There's
No.
definitely a modest upward trend. There is a sustainable trend in the right direction. But I think the diversity, the very global scale, and the diversity of the gaming ecosystem is contributing to a lot of overall wellness. I want to say in a lot of more of the conglomerate publisher developer picture than it might be otherwise. I think it's a little bit rosier in some cases, bolstered by the phone game, the mobile market, and just basically how broad based the consumer base for so many different types of titles on many different platforms is now. So I think that does give them a little more leeway, which which is why it to some extent I find it surprising that that there's, for example, Ubi holds that debt load. Granted, there was some corporate history there, some takeovers and things in the past, attempts at that. So they've had some corporate strategies struggles to deal with. It's not solely on the game front, but that's there it is a really big picture with that. So it is interesting to look at. How much of the creative decision and the marketing and business decisions go into it versus kind of just the the health of the consumer market globally, and how much we're able to contribute to the continued success of a lot of these companies, even in spite of some greater or lesser missteps. That
Though they're not the only ones. I believe Sony is also drowning in a lot of debt. WB is drowning in a lot of debt. Is there any big AAA publisher that's not drowning in a lot of debt right now?
Well,
that's a good question. That's a good question. I think EA has a considerable debt load. Yeah.
EA.
There's a lot of them. Electronic Arts.
if you want, I can talk about the big five: Microsoft, Tencent, Sony, Nintendo, and EA. I got the stats here.
Nasmer, yeah, please, yeah, if you want to speak on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so obviously, because we kept seeing the doomsaying on a total market crash on the industry, I got to give a credit out to this guy, the Cream Nado, who's kind of a co-host on a show I do. He found this website called companiesmarketcap.com, which goes through the financials of their yearly earnings and shows the past 10 years. I'm going to throw out a lot of numbers here, but I'll be able to summarize it for the audience when they're like, whoa, that was 15 different numbers. So with Microsoft, their earnings is 113 billion. Their debt is 62 billion. The cash on hand they have is 71 billion. Tencent, its earnings 27 billion, debt 50 billion, cash on hand 50 billion. Sony, 10 billion earnings, debt 27 billion, cash on hand 19 billion. Nintendo, 4.6 billion earnings. Its debt, no debt with Nintendo. Their last debt report was 13 million in 2009. The cash on hand they have is 14.1 billion. EA, it's got 1.4 billion in earnings, 1.9 billion debt, and 3.1 billion cash on hand. So, like I said, that's a lot of numbers for people. I don't expect you to memorize all those or have a notepad jotted it down.
Sure.
But to scale it down to kind of a household, to maybe scale it down so people can imagine it, I would say it would be akin to a household income of 140,000 a year. They've got a $100,000 to $200,000 mortgage to pay off, but they also have 130,000 in their savings. So they're quite stable and able to pay off their operating costs, because all those earnings I mentioned was after operating costs, which makes me wonder why there are so many layoffs. Maybe it is a case of there's an equilibrium, like you said, Jdawg, which is there's a cap now on the total amount that they can keep making number go up for the stockholders and shareholders and stuff. There's only so much they can do.
Right.
So this is why you're seeing a lot of mass layoffs on a studio level when a game fails. This is why you're seeing the justification of my inflation, bro, and then costs going up. And
well put.
yeah, and then this is also why you're seeing $200 million games, these quadruple A games being trying to put out there, so that they can justify monetizing the hell out of them, so that way they can extract as much revenue and earnings as possible to keep that number going up on the charts.
Right.
So real quick, 2 points. One, the quick point: hearing that Nintendo has not had depth for so many years kind of changes my entire perspective of the Switch 2 fiasco by a lot. Uh, and when we
16
get
years with no debt.
to that, well,
Very
I will.
responsible corporate citizenship. Just gonna say it.
My opinions are just changing as time flows on. But as for the all the other stuff about layoffs and whatnot, it might, from the sounds of it, it might really just be an issue of let's find a way to cut costs and look better, just for the sake of doing it, dollar for the sake of dollar, type of
Well,
mindset.
there are always margins that any company has to maintain or looks to maintain. And there will always be fluctuations. And they recognize this. They're business, they're people that run businesses, that this is common practice. Just like maintaining a debt is also very much common practice as long as you don't get in over your head like Ubisoft has.
Right.
But there are a lot of factors that people do fail to take into account too. Like cost of electricity. I mean, these are very large technical companies. So if you even see a 2 to 3 cent increase per kilowatt hour on electricity, that's going to be a massive amount of expenditure that those companies will incur. And we're talking millions, sometimes tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars a year, just off of a small rise like that. And corporations are always in the business to make money. And so if they see something that continues to exhibit a pattern of unprofitability, they will either refocus it or remove it. Plain and simple. And unfortunately, that comes at the cost of a lot of people's jobs.
Yeah. A point on the debt as well for all these companies is when you hear the like 62 billion in debt, you're like, oh my lord. But when you combine it with the cash on hand they have and the earnings, you kind of realize that, as Sid said, it's beneficial for them to have that debt and pay it off over time, so that they can build credit and then have better means to loan money for future projects or whatever they want to do.
Or you utilize banks as funding sources for acquisitions, like what Sony has done numerous times.
Yes. Yeah. The change in the finance structure and some of the strategies that some of these larger companies use when they're expanding or starting a new creative line, definitely evolved. Definitely evolved in from where they started even a decade ago, much less closer into the earlier days of the video game industry. So I'd like to shift topics. What One of the headline items out there is Kotaku. Um, that's a major game publication. Has been for a little over a decade. That's one of the more major mainstream online reporting outlets, and a lot of the mainstream gaming coverage, not just from Kotaku or with Go Media, influences or influenced, I probably should say, a lot of player decision, a lot of game purchase decisions. I'd say historically more so than in the present. Right, we've reached a place where mass movement in terms of sales is not as much indicated. I would say by favorable reviews than it has been, and certainly it's kind of been a declining trend. Gamers are going different places, perhaps even to places such as this, a Gamer Roundtable, on social media, on streaming platforms, to get more of a balanced and I would say fair assessment takes on these things than they can really rely upon from a lot of the so-called gaming press, right? Um, I'm open to hear all your opinions on this point, and then I think we can move to the Kotek suit, because there is a suit against them at this time.
I mean, I'll start off. I'll disclose. So I used to work for a gaming news site called Tech Factor.
Tech
I work with
Factor?
them.
Tech Raptor.
Tech
Raptor.
Raptor. Tech Raptor. I'm familiar with them. Yes.
Yes.
Please continue.
I worked with them for about 3 years as a content partner, so I did their Steam Watch series of articles where I would talk about maybe lesser discovered stories on Steam. And the process that they had, I'm not sure how, obviously I can't speak on how standard it is across all gaming media publication sites, but what they did is they would have the initial writer and they would be commissioned a story, and the writer would virtually at the forefront have full creative control over how that story was written. Any opinion or editorial content that gets included would just be the writer's raw opinion. Then it would be sent off to the editors, and the editors were, in my experience, incredibly well versed and really, really helpful. Where they would look at, they wouldn't change any of the writer's opinions, unlike a couple of other outlets that I've worked for that tried to make me change my total opinion on a piece. They would instead offer constructive criticism, and they would give me alternative perspectives to consider, to then help further inform my argument that I was trying to make in a piece, which I thought was very fair, very balanced, and it ultimately did help the pieces in a qualitative standpoint. In terms of Kotaku, there is a lot in terms of opinion editorials that I've seen that, I do disagree with. There's other parts where I'm like, okay, no, they make a fair point. But I think that's kind of the same with any kind of gaming media publication. I think we are the same because at the end of the day, we are just individuals. We don't have a massive team behind us that are content checking or gatekeeping any of our content. It is just us and our opinions, not necessarily maybe an unbiased one, because all of us have biases, and I think it's fair that we just accept that, rather than pretend like, oh, we are the most unsubjugated and unbiased people in the world, and we can look at it from a very, very clear perspective. It's not the case. We've all got our own opinions that we bring to the table. And I think that is something that is a crossover that I think is fair to compare between people like us and the likes of Kotaku. We are just people at the end of the day writing an opinion.
That is true. We are all people, and people are fallible.
Speak for yourself.
There's got to be one. There's always one. I hear where you're coming from. Look, as consumers and as a consumerist group, which GBAMFS is, standards and accountability, fitness, product fitness, service, customer service, where that's directly applicable, that those all count. Those all count as points. I think they count in general. They count to most people. But speaking to those points specifically on behalf of this org, the coverage, and I'm sorry, we do seem to have a radio in the background. If someone could check on that. Thank you. So, yeah, those on that point specifically, I'm going to softly disagree with you, Mello. In essence, the issue is not, I think, and we have reported, just a disclosure, as an organization, we have reported plainly, but I think also just as plainly unfavorably on Kotaku's output over the years, including up to the present, and on the conduct of their personnel. And gamers, I mean, it's hard to say as far as a readership goes, especially like on a non-subscription basis. It's hard to say, the relationship-wise, that anyone is owed anything, right? I mean, particularly the only thing anyone is owed, if you pick up a random piece of paper, is perhaps the obligation self-imposed to take the time to read it, if that's what's there. But I think there are responsibilities, I think widely recognized, very reasonable, social and market expectations that at a certain scale or with a certain platform, that some basic standards and some accountability is adhered to. I don't think those things are unreasonable. Do I think they're specifically obligations upon publishers? I think it's more of an open question. I won't answer in the affirmative, but it is an open question. I'm inclined to say yes to some extent. I mean, I don't think I believe veracity matters in publications in public speech. I especially think that in any kind of market context, I think that's kind of crucial. There is such a thing. There is a notion of false advertising. That's one example of speech or published content that is in principle that is it's a bad, it's a foul, and that's product specific. There also comes to be the considerations of that which is defamatory or libelous, very broad categories, and they differ from country to country significantly. But the published output of countries differ significantly. So I don't want to monologue on the point, but I do have some considered thoughts on it, and some not inconsiderable feelings on the topic of Kotaku's lack of veracity in their coverage, which is shorthand for what Stephen Colbert, a famous name, referred to as truthiness. Right, that's the closeness to the truth, right? The proximity and kind of the direction, if not the actual full and complete truth that maybe people do or don't have time or interest for. But yeah, getting close matters, and Kotaku has flown wide of the mark consistently throughout its history, in my opinion, and the opinions of not an inconsiderable number of gamers, particularly, who have been the target, without real dispute, I believe, of a lot of the invective, a lot of the malign sorts of headlines coverage that have been produced from that outfit. And so yeah, I'll give them the human pass. They're fallible human people. Are they doing the right things by gamers? Are they doing the right thing for the market? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's something I believe that it's completely merited to take them to task on. I've actually been breathing the whole time, by the way, Jamali. I'm very passionate on the subject. I'm opening this up to the table, opening up the floor on this.
If I could just hop in as well, because what you mentioned there did remind me of a conversation I had with a user in Discord, about, because they were saying, oh, Kotaku is so inconsistent. They said it was a much more benign point. They said, oh, they said the game was great in this article, and then they say the game's shit. But I made the point of, well, you also need to consider that's two different authors, and
Of course.
the two authors aren't obliged to have the same opinion, even if it's going up on the same publication. They are there to house a collection of writers that are passionate about games. They clearly want to get into games journalism because they like games or they like writing. You wouldn't go into that if there was just zero interest in either of those. But rather than having to look at it as a conglomerate or as this just mega website with a hive mind of individuals, I think you also need to consider that there is individual thought behind that website. There are good eggs, there are bad eggs for sure. But I always maybe take a bit of an issue when people try and lump everybody that works for that, like for one website, as like, okay, no, that website doesn't do things right, unless obviously it's like one person or a small collection of people, and it's like they all fall into the same potholes as well. The mistakes that they've made, absolutely, they've definitely made mistakes. Whether the mistakes are to be put at the fault of the writer or the editors or anyone else that's part of the creative process of getting those articles created, that's up in the air. That's really only for Kotaku to investigate and show that they would be taking it seriously.
Yeah, well, I'm going to hard disagree with you on that point. Their readership certainly ought to have and frankly, the casual browser who may find themselves disturbed by something that's actually or adjacent to misinformation promulgated through that venue. I'd say they have their own stake in pushing back. Is there anyone else here that has an opinion on
Well,
Kotaku?
I would say I have many opinions about Kotaku. I could probably consume an hour talking about my opinions on Kotaku.
Take
but
some time, please.
one thing I will say is that I do agree with you, Mello, in that John should not be held guilty for what Debbie and Dave did. I don't think that's fair. But with sites like Kotaku and Polygon and so many others, when the plurality of their content that they produce is far more leaning on activism and opinion versus journalism and reporting, it reaches a point where they cannot be considered a serious journalistic outlet any longer, and more of just a mouthpiece for opinions they wish to push on others. I think Kotaku is a company that I would not shed a single tear if they shuttered their doors tomorrow. And same with Polygon and VG247 and several others. And I'm sure they might have a couple of good, honest journalists working there, but the vast majority of them, that is not the case.
Yeah, I'm going to concur with Sid on this. The the benefit of the doubt and the severability factors and arguments, they're there. Yeah, Kotaku, for full disclosure, they've produced some articles at one point or another that I like. The issue here is, as Sid alludes to, it's the preponderance of their output. It's by any objective standard. We'll assume for the purposes that standard exists. It's been of dubious to negative value. Looks like we might have lost Mello here. Hopefully he'll log back in. But that is my take on it. Nasmer or T-Man, do you have any thoughts on this before we dive into Kotick's suit?
Well, this can probably transition to the suit. So one of the things which makes me really sad, and I think Sid will have some things to say about this, is, yeah, they are really inflammatory. They do the rage bait, they do the clickbait, do all of the stuff that just ruins the journalistic integrity. But in this current year, in this day and age, would it be possible for a company of that size to be able to continue going without doing all of that stupid stuff?
That's a
More
fair
than
question.
likely not.
Yeah.
It's a fair conjecture. Nasmer, anything?
With every single one of these websites, Kotaku, AGN, I do see the value they have in the journalistic reporting and breaking the news stories on things regarding gaming related. It's when you start getting into the opinion pieces that are placed out there. In Kotaku's case, like something like during Gamergate, the gamers are over type style articles. That's when you get the obvious pushback, and even I would disagree with that. The ideological bent to it. The reviews for Mello, I completely understand that there are multiple different authors per review, and they will each have their own little subjective opinions, I guess you'd say. But the problem then is it's all housed under one name, which is like IGN or Kotaku, and then you've got lots of people like the casual reader say like, oh, they gave Space Marine 2 a 7, but then this crap game an 8. What the hell? So there would have to be some kind of implementation of consistency, some type of principles on how you review games, which would be tough to implement.
Right.
But yeah, it's those opinion pieces, and then on the opposite end, where for every Gamers Are Over article, you see someone who's like, we need a pro-Trump video game. You're like, what are we doing here?
You see that from mainstream publications? I'd be very interested to see.
It's just like a hyperbolic example, but not mainstream.
I was going to say that would be exciting simply on account of how different it would be.
One thing I will say in defense of all of these games journalism websites, which includes Kotaku, is that when it comes to game reviews and the review scores and everything like that, the vast majority of those sites actually do have checklists and categories for their reviewers to adhere with, because the sites want the reviews to be as consistent as as possible with all of their other reviews, which is why they have a formula that the reviewers are set to follow. We don't, in the vast majority of cases, we don't see what that formula is, but it's there. It does exist.
Sure, sure. I could agree with you. There's got to be some internal rubrics for a lot of these very principally very conglomerate owned. It's kind of a deep topic on its own. Pretty much all these publishers, they're not independent. That's something that's noteworthy. But whatever their internal criteria is for these, what's also noteworthy, and this is what it comes down to is when you make a publication is kind of inherently a social, it's a social paradigm, right? I mean, very few people would or do publish. Essentially, it's the difference between journaling and journalism, right? One has an implicitly social purpose, and a lot of the value, I think, in gaming journalism has run out of it. Now the question is that on account of, well, really the question, I think, is what is that on account of? Is it on account of social coarsening, that they have to do rage bait in order to get people's attention? I mean, is it on account of the fact that their reviews are no longer speak to the audiences that they're reviewing them for? Those are conjectures, but those are also questions I have personally as a gamer and reader of reviews. Sometimes we publish reviews. I'll be doing more reviewing work myself. The sea change in games journalism is very pronounced. It's at least a decade old, at least, and maybe accelerating or at a more developed stage now. But there's a lot of distrust among the gamer community of mainstream publications, and I'd say a fair amount of that is earned. On account of the lack of, forget the lack of diversity in opinions on reviews. They use the same verbiage. We're talking cloned verbiage, the return to form. This is not really journalism. I mean, there's other forms of publishing that utilize those kind of methodologies. It's not really good review, candid, and original journalism work. So I give them very low points in modern times. Many of them, not uniformly, and not even uniformly for a given outfit. There are some bright spots and some here and there, but across the board, dismal state of games journalism. But that is a deep topic, and there are many questions individually uniquely worth considering as to what goes into that. But it's clear that the influence of the gaming press is principally industry facing. It would be my observation that I put on the table here at this point in time, and not public facing, because if it were, they would have a much different model of output and a much different degree of responsiveness that wasn't telling their audience that they would like them to go away or die in some editorial opinions. So that's my take on that. What think we, and what say you on the subject of the Kotek suit? Are you familiar with that? I could go into a little background for the audience's benefit.
I personally am relatively familiar with it. I have not had a chance to read through the full court document yet, but I am reasonably up to date on it.
Okay.
I only have a vague understanding of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you gave me a bit of a brief introduction into it. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the matter here. I'll give my reacting thoughts, perhaps.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just give a little background and summary. Bobby Kotick is the longtime, and we did do a little coverage on this organization, there's a little reporting on it, but it's simply factual matters, so there's no editorial apart from our stated disapproval of Kotaku's output, which it's neither here nor there with respect to this issue. So Bobby Kotick was a longtime leader of Activision, brought them out of near bankruptcy in the early 90s, led them to, famously with, the acquisition of Blizzard and things like that, to great profitability. And they Activision was acquired by Microsoft in 2019, and not long after that, Kotick found himself leaving the company, and there were some issues there, culture issues with the company that were reported, and it had been for some years, surrounding a workplace culture, crunch culture, also harassment, potential other allegations, hostile workplace, things like this. And so Kotaku was notable among other publications, some under the Go Media, parent company of Kotaku, and other ones, in being a it propagated these narratives, some of which were withdrawn, some of which were investigated, found to be unsubstantiated. I believe some were also substantiated, but on to different degree or grounds than was reported. So Kotaku at this time is the subject of a suit by Bobby Kotick, former CEO of Activision, who left in the wake of those reports, and he's filed suit against them. Also the allegations include a degree of union, the employee union for Activision, having some degree of involvement or complicity in promulgating these narratives, which led in Kotick's complaint, pardon me, to creating a public perception, unfair public perception of himself, and pressure for him to step down, which he eventually did. And so the suit is, I have to look up the figure here, but it is for a considerable sum, and it if it doesn't threaten to bankrupt Kotaku or his parent company, it certainly is going to put a hurt in their continued operations. So that's the status of it. At this point, it is working its way through the court. It's a newly filed complaint, and so I just want to know if anyone, Sid, I know you have some familiarity with it. What do you think of the situation? How do you think it reflects on Kotaku, on the journalism, games journalism in general, perhaps, and Kotick and Activision? Any of those?
Well, one of the core points there that Kotick seems to be leaning on is where he stated there was no internal or external definitive findings on wrongdoing in regards to the harassment and stuff like that, and there was also no court findings on that as well. And that's the whole basis of his argument there, as to why he's claiming these statements are false and defamatory. Which I'm sure they will make a very good case, because the dude is extremely wealthy, so I'm sure he can afford only the best attorneys to be able to represent him. The thing is, though, there was no court filing because they chose to settle the lawsuit. And settlement, one party does not admit to fault, and the other party does not continue to claim that they are in the wrong, and they don't deal with the whole process of going through a court battle, and for that they get a nice little fat stack of change. And mostly settlements like that are typically take place not because a party is guilty or innocent. It's because it would be less expensive than going through the legal process of a long drawn out court battle. That said, that's why they settled, which is why there was no legal finding on whether or not there was any wrongdoing involved there. And as far as an internal audit, well, when was the last time you saw a company anywhere that actually conducted an internal audit and then came back with, yeah, we messed up? It's not going to happen with one of these corporations, because that would be admitting default, and that would cost them a lot more in the long run. So it only makes sense that the company will cover its own backside by stating they conducted an audit, and they might deal with a problem internally, but they will never publicly admit to any fault like that whatsoever. And a third party or an external audit would be the same thing, because it would be hired by the company to conduct the investigation. And so it would still typically be handled in the same way, where they might deal with it and resolve the issue internally, but publicly facing, no. So of course there's not going to be any public findings related to that. Now, whether or not Kotaku actually defamed him or not, that's a matter of some debate, because we also have the simple fact of Bobby Kotick is a public figure, whether he likes to admit it or not. So then, means he's a public figure, or at least in this case, at minimum, an involuntary public figure, he would have to prove actual malice in their reporting, which basically states that they would have to knowingly have lied within that report.
Correct. That is the standard. Um, yeah, I mean, based on Kotaku's history, which is not hard to see, of publishing unfavorable headlines of a variety of different groups, gamers most notably, but I mean, also publishing true but of socially, I'd say, negligible value or interest, sex tapes, and outing people who were closeted individuals, things of this nature, things that really kind of have dubious import in gaming, for one thing. But our tabloid or sub-tabloid tier of information reportage in terms of coverage, one of which notably with Hulk Hogan, resulted in their closure, the bankruptcy of their parent company, and closure before. I'd say it wouldn't be an unreasonable expectation that Kotick might, independent of any resources he has access to, might just get somewhere with his suit on account of the haphazard editorial, quality control, and the very liberal, used in a specific context, use of their editorial discretion in favor of reporting things that are not terribly in the public interest. I think most people would agree. But between those things, I think it's a question of whether Kotaku can skate by on their choice of target, and whether there may be merit to these allegations, which is, again, it's already been addressed to some extent, or whether I think the question will be whether Kotick can actually prove that there was a malign influence campaign, essentially, against him, based on his own resources of discovery. So that's kind of, I think we can just leave it there. Unless
I'm actually looking forward to the discovery. I really am.
yeah. I mean, if there is something there that would be of some public information value, but yeah, I can't say I have a great deal of suspension of disbelief or belief in Kotaku's output overall. Frankly, it leads me, if anything, to be more disinclined to accept the veracity of the coverage. So who knows? That
Well,
is
the thing
really
is, too, this is very much a situation of two very maligned entities going at each other.
right. Right. No, Kotick has been. I think we could say he's been criticized for maybe high-handed management style, a distant management style, among other things. Some of it might be there might be a baseline level of kind of sour grapes here. He does have, I guess you could say, haters, right? People in the industry that he don't like Kotick for whatever reason. So it's a complex issue. I think there's a lot to delve into there, and that is what the court process is for.
If I can, sorry, just to jump in as well, because
Sure.
I think Kotick's history predates what you mentioned a bit there, Jay. Because Kotick, obviously, whereas he was CEO of Activision for so long, he oversaw some of the most predatory microtransactions, and like even putting gambling mechanics into the game to intentionally prey on vulnerable people. So I do think that there's maybe a bit more context that I just felt was probably more appropriate to put in there, just to maybe contextualize the issue more in terms of Kotick's history, just obviously to maintain balance.
Absolutely. No, there's in terms of production, in terms of game direction, there's very criticizable points that well, he did lead the companies to profitability, which is a boon. I mean, it could be a very tough industry, and he did manage to hold that position for decades and lead them upward. There is a question within that there could be from a business standpoint of at what cost, and creatively in a game standpoint, at what cost in creative terms in the game and quality terms in game. And yeah, people have criticized Blizzard specifically, which eventually fell under Activision's umbrella. For some of, I mean, horse armor, famously horse armor, and I think the horse armor was under Kotick. So there's a lot to discuss there.
Wasn't the horse armor Bethesda?
Bethesda. Oh, that's. Well, yeah, no, you're right.
The horse armor was Bethesda.
It was Bethesda. I mixed that one up big time. Okay, well, I mean the same thing would be true across the board in terms of WoW items and stuff. Yeah, no, that was absolutely Bethesda. Thank you. All right. Well, moving on. I do think that suit will be an interesting one to follow, and I think there will be a not insubstantial number of people who will take interest in the outcome. Yeah, whether anyone is going to actually be more in favor of one or the other, I think both of those parties have their detractors, certainly. So speaking of mixing it up on online and social media, potentially with malign attributes. I want to move on to probably a better example than either of those two, but still one that's more recent and current in the space. So, in regards to the Warhorse Studios did Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which has been very favorably received in general. Very it had a very controversial title in some quarters online, in the more community review commentariat. Although generally received well by both publications and mainstream gaming audiences. Daniel Vavra was the creative lead on that. I want to kind of just dig into his example, in which he, his social media engagement strategy. That's kind of at issue just because, well, in defense of the game and promoting the game, he did butt up against some pretty strong detractors and dissent on either the creative direction of the title or just attacking him personally and things of that nature. So there's a few examples of this. Is some name calling on his part, not quite to the categorical extent that like a Kotaku kind of said, just paraphrasing, "You all suck," right? Go die gamers, paraphrasing there too, but just that much. He definitely he punched back, right, so to speak. So, does anyone have any thoughts on Vavra's approach in social media? Any criticisms or room for improvement you would point to in kind of the example of someone like that?
Criticisms, I would have gone harder, to be honest. In terms of strategy, I don't even know if it was strategy or he was just sick of it. But in this day and age of the current year of social media, staying quiet, unfortunately, does not work, and it does not inspire confidence. But seeing people actually hit back when people are telling such obvious and malicious lies about your product, yeah, you don't stay silent about that. You just go right at it. Kingdom Come has been one of the very few things in which I hit a certain point where I just said, the other side of this thing, I don't care what they say. I don't care what they show me. I'm just assuming they are wrong and moving on, because you cannot be this wrong this often and expect for me to take you seriously.
Mm-hmm.
That is the level that we hit with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I actually cannot. I can't blame him either. With the level of how serious these accusations were, the response was pretty justified, pretty human here. The criticism of it not being official, I feel like it can be a damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you issue like through the company a statement offering this that's gone through like corporate layering so that it's as boilerplate and clean as possible, people will still attack you based on that. I mean, you can look at something like Assassin's Creed Shadows, whether or not you think it's justified to attack them on that. They issued a statement saying they had no intent to offend Japan, and it still breathed oxygen into the people who wanted to hate them for it, and they attacked the statement. So I do think that whatever he did to try and dispel these lies on his game there's no winning with these people.
So you do think you just in sum you say the detractors and speaking to your point, T-Man, the sensational and salacious nature of the claims, basically, just for audience benefit, some bad actors that have been just full disclosure have been addressed in our own publications as mistaken in the most generous reading in their output. And this is a kind of a throwback to something adjacent to Kotaku, but far worse, because what they did is they claimed that there were underage characters in the game. This is not accurate. The lore said that was not accurate. It's also visibly not accurate, and the voice actors are very mature people. So none of that was true, and it was carried in. Some publications online, very niche ones, but all the same they were. So just with that background stated, yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with both of you on that point. That some pushback was definitely responsible, prudent, and necessary. It was also in a roundabout fashion addressed in our own article on those publications and some of the people responsible for them. So that's in principle absolutely agreed. Pushback against bad information, misinformation, information that's false. But the question is, did he go too far in in name calling? Basically, should it have lowered themselves to do that? Even if they're proud of their work, I'm sure he deeply resents the implications there.
No, if you say that I put pedophilic things in my video game, I'm coming to your house. Forget about mean things online. I'm coming to see you in real life.
Yeah. It's a fair point.
I genuinely wish that he tried to sue them. Like, I might have actually tried to fundraise for him in that case. I would love discovering him that one.
To be perfectly honest, I'm partially surprised that he didn't attempt to sue them over that, because that is, I've seen a lot of that in recent months and recent year-ish of people that have been using anything and everything they can to do basically the YouTube or Twitch version of what Kotaku and all those other websites have done for a very, very long time, which is to generate viewership based on outrage and based on, and it's a terrible thing, especially because I've played Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's a fantastic game. It's very well done. You can definitely tell that the devs were passionate about this game when they were making it. It basically oozes out of every part of the scenery and most aspects of that game. And if you put your heart and soul into something, and to see someone come along and just cop a squat right over the top of it, as it were, just for the sake of doing so, yeah, I'd be enraged. So name calling, definitely not out of the question. It's
and from my
side, I would have also been
agree
seeking legal action against them as well.
Yeah. On my side, I didn't even know the game existed until they announced the sequel, so I had no dog in the fight. I was just looking at it just as it was.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's a genuine work of art, and just a small disclosure: we did publish a favorable review on it, by a third party. It wasn't reviewed internally specifically, but yeah, beautiful game. I mean, absolutely something to be proud of. I point of clarification: not sure if it's already award winning. I think it is, but I do believe it's going to be a candidate for any number of awards, and rightly so. Rightly so. A very very well made game. Harkening back to the press issue, I do see a lot of this as the plea for relevance on the part of the print the print gaming journalism, and it's a shame. You know, deplorable. It's just not the sort of thing that benefits anyone. It certainly doesn't benefit the gaming community. So I would like to see these kinds of bad practices put an end to, but that is the media age we live in.
And they did it all for the clicks. They did it all for the views. Some of them definitely were not even believing the stuff they were saying.
No.
There was one person in particular that drove me up the wall. I won't mention the name specifically to not give them the attention they deserve.
Right.
But they published on Twitter screenshots of how you can report the game on Steam to get it taken off the website.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And from there, they got called out hard. So they ended up deleting that post. While this was going on, they said they were making a video on all of this that was going on. They decided not to post the video because everybody else was being so immature about this that he felt like he could not have a reasonable conversation about what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. The tone and the tension around it's extremely sensational stuff they're saying. You have people coming completely completely unglued and attacking Vavra, which is part of why I would say I agree. It wasn't even just limited to the game. They attacked him creatively. They attacked the studio. Very it's just really it's a journalistic embarrassment, and you can't really call the people peddling that kind of thing journalists.
I was gonna say that's not journalism. That's
It's yellow journalism.
it's about as far it's so far removed from journalism you can't even reliably call it yellow journalism.
Yeah,
People insult Kotaku all the time, but then they went steps even beyond Kotaku.
It's National Enquirer levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. My neighbor is an alien, and that was benign. That was benign.
And they still haven't stopped. I'm still seeing people say that. Yeah, this game had the 15-year-olds doing it to this day.
No.
Just yesterday was the last time I saw it.
Yeah.
So well, what can you do at this point?
That is the hazard of dis and miss, spreading falsehoods, information.
A lie will get halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put its boots on.
That's the issue. It filters through the gaming or whatever the publication is consumed through the system, and the damage it takes time. It takes time, and it's not always easy to resolve, or lies to be. People have to put effort into that. So yeah, a very very bad situation with that. I think Vavra can be, I think some of it was. I think it's probably more of a perspective issue. Just when you have that many people coming at you on social media, with heads full of steam based on complete lies like that, I think it could be a little difficult to be proportionate and civil with some of the people that may be just criticizing something more basic about the game. So we did challenge Vavra to reconsider his approach a little bit. We did approach him in a post, an X post on that. But as far as condemning his response, not really something that we see as merited. It's more or less this is something that a publisher would have to do, with any number of team of people. It's just a dev, creative head in this case, took the initiative to do that himself. So,
To provide a bit of context as well, I remember when the first game came out and it was criticized for not being diverse enough, and Vavra responded in a very similar manner to those people criticizing the game. And the people criticizing Kingdom Come 2 now would praise him as based back in the day, and now we see a total 180 reversal. It's wild.
Well, they would have, but he made the cardinal sin of allowing an option for a gay relationship in the game. Therefore,
that's what it was.
he's a traitor now, as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Somebody said in the comments, Jamali, he should box them like Wei Bol did.
Uwe Boll, yeah.
Yeah, you're familiar with him. So he's a niche. Thank you for that comment, by the way, Jamali. He niche director, right? He did the Postal movie. And
He's a terrible director.
oh, he's a great director of B movies, of niche and subpar movies. Anyway, the best thing he ever did might have been challenging his detractors in the press to be boxed, to box him. Right, he's an amateur boxer, and to their credit, a few of them did step up, and I think there were some substitutions there, and it was all for charity, and I think everyone won. So, kudos to Wei. As a B movie fan, I'm a fan. So let's move on to we have some other topics here. So has anyone heard of Mark Kern, also known as Grums?
No, I've never heard the name before.
No. Okay. Well, in full deadpan irony for virtually
I was going to say,
everyone
I know
here-
this one. I'll go last on this one. Just 'cause
Okay, that's
eat
fair.
up another hour or two there.
You can volunteer to do that. I think I'll volunteer up front to say that I of course I was being facetious in that question. Mark Kern, for those who may not be aware, is a famous developer formerly of Blizzard. Had involvement with World of Warcraft, among other things. So an eminent dev in his time. Some would perhaps characterize his status as emeritus or retired at this point. But that is a matter of perspective based on observations about his present day output, which, again, in basic disclosure, this organization has challenged him on social media to address the concerns that his backers have. There are backers, and there is a putative game, a title, which he has been for over 8 years.
Over 9 now.
Over nine. So yeah, in the range of 9 years. From the time of announcement, 10 plus years. So we're talking about a long time frame for game development. For anyone that doesn't know, that's a very mature game development time schedule. It's actually quite overripe. You don't typically see developments take too much longer than that. Even Dragon Age, famously, the most recent one, for however that was received, which was not too well. For the amount of time involved, good or bad, you could put out a lot of product, especially with. There's a resource consideration, there's personnel considerations, all of these things go into it, but that's a lot of time, point blank. And there's no game. The game originally is titled Ember. It may have a different name at this point in time. And yeah, there's been a lot of calls for him to show his work, quite frankly, including on the part of this organization, because gamers can reasonably expect a certain amount of transparency based on published statements, and investors which have continuously supported him for the the preponderant amount of that development time. So that is the present state of it. That's to say, it's unclear what the present state of that production is. I think that's a pretty good footing for where we are to jump off from. If anyone wants to take it from here.
Yeah. So my first interactions with Mark was seeing him on Twitter talking about gaming budgets. Actually, at the time, roughly this time last year, and I was curious because we all saw these 200, $300 million games constantly coming out and not making the margins it should have, or that they wanted to be very profitable. And I reached out to see if he would be willing to talk about that. He wasn't, which again is fine. Some people, I've made a video since, and some people try and like plaster that I'm just some jealous person who's upset he didn't talk to me. It wasn't that. It was just that was the first interaction I had with him. To provide context, to show that I wasn't some like out of the gate hater. I was actually on board with what he had to say. But I continued to follow him, and I saw that he was producing an indie game. I'm very interested in the indie market, so as I joined the Discord that he had for that, and looked up the forums, and it was just bad on bad on bad in terms of development times, like you've said, versus the output of what he's done. I would collect the information because I wanted to make a video about how bad it was after about 3 or 4 months of watching this in abject horror.
Eventually you got there. You went in with the intention, I'm sure, I'll let you speak to it,
of
but
trying
to
to buy,
observe,
to be a backer. I
well,
wanted
you
to
wanted
be
the
a backer.
game. It's even
I
better.
wanted to get hold of the game, and I couldn't even log into the website. It would just send me through an infinite loop of email verifications and never send me the verification. So that's just one of many things that was going wrong. And the video itself was going to be about, the state of Ember and how the production cycle versus the results. And this is when one of the people in the chat, McDizzle, beat me to the punch there and was able to reveal that he had a $265,000 tax lien levied against him 6 months before he started the first crowdfunding project.
Hello to McDizzle and good investigative work. I'll just
Yeah,
say.
100%. I wouldn't. That didn't even occur to me at the time. So then that just like kickstarted it, like really jumped me into gear then into making that video. And since then, I'll let the other people commentate on it, but it's just been going on a downward spiral.
All right. So I'm going to try and keep this as short and clean as possible. So for me, I was a supporter of Mark way back since the first Gamergate. Now, in terms of the cultural stuff, to try and keep it as simple as possible, all the stuff about beating wokeness, beating DEI, ending all of that, the gay agenda, etc., etc. I'm actually on board with ending all of that. I want it gone. In fact, I want it gone so badly. That's the reason I was supporting Mark and him doing the game stuff. Because one of the things I've said for many, many years is that we can't just keep talking and talking and talking about it. We need to actually physically do something. And Mark, having the experience and all the background and all that stuff, I thought he was going to be the guy who actually did something, got something going. And then when I found out that it's been 8-9 years and that's all he's got to show for it, well, that's the reason why I titled my video on him, he's a ticking time bomb, because he's going to explode in everyone's face. Because you can't be taking over 600,000, probably over $1 million at this point from the people and produce that. What we got last week.
Yeah.
That was an abomination.
Yeah. I think Sid and I will probably delve more into a little bit of the technical side of it, because that, an explanation on some of the part of the people that are a little more faithful about the production, I think it's fair to say, is that there are technical reasons, why the product is not in evidence to the degree it probably ought to be by most reasonable expectations of standards in the games industry. And so we have probably a bit more to say on that. Mello, looking for you to jump in here.
Yeah, so I was somewhat passively aware. Again, I'm going to try and keep this as a TLDR. I was quite passively aware of Mark. I wasn't fully invested. In fact, I think I found Mark through Sid, because I just saw Sid was on a Twitter rampage one day, and I'm like, who was this guy that sits talking about loads?
I never do such things.
Yeah, unheard of. And neither does Kern, for that matter. I mean, isn't he busily at work developing his long-running game
Clearly.
project? But please
Clearly.
continue, Mello.
So I went ahead and had a look, and I like to think I've got a lot of patience for a lot of people on the internet.
That's a good approach.
But with
Put up with me
somebody,
for years, so you know.
yeah,
It's better than getting mad at everyone on the internet. I mean, just close
well,
the
yeah.
laptop.
Yeah, I do like to try and live up to my name, whether it's Mellow or it's an annoying dweeb who hates phone.
Yeah. You two are right.
So, I quickly found from watching Mark on Twitter, I found he's got a very, very fragile ego. He has got on the verge of a god complex where he wants to be something that is greater than the sum of his parts. He wants to be this great idol that everybody looks up to, but fails a temperament test because he loses his shit at stuff that is incredibly personal to him that ultimately doesn't matter. He's still on about the Ubisoft ratio when everyone else has moved on about it. There was a tweet he put up just today and said, oh, how was that Ubisoft ratio? But anyway, so I became a little bit more aware about the game development that was going on with Ember. And that made, and then I'm obviously casually browsing Steam a lot of the time for my work on my curator. And then I see this game come up on Steam called Ember. I'm like, wait a minute, I know this. And then it was obviously, for those that don't know the background, basically an indie developer who went under the name of Combs and uploaded a NSFW porn parody game of Ember to Steam for free. And he basically said, I've been able to release Ember before Grums has. I'm not going to go into the full plot line because I don't think a lot of it would be suitable for me to describe on YouTube. But
So it's a long story in any case.
yeah, it's a long story. But yeah, I've been following him on and off, and I've also got my own profile that I'd set up not too long ago called Grums is Right, which is a parody account that aims to try and fact check a lot of statements that Grums has made or just add a bit more context.
I dare say, pardon the interruption, it is deeply amusing. As a broad, one with a broad humor, palette of humor, it is a very funny parody. A very funny parody account, and I appreciate where you're coming from.
Thank you very much.
Do continue.
Oh no, I mean I'm pretty much finished there. To be fair, that's where my history with him begins and ends. I mean, he blocked me. He blocked the parody page that I made in 6 days, and then he just blocked me a couple of days ago. I can't even remember. I put up a few tweets about him that day, but I can't remember specifically what made him push the envelope.
Well, it doesn't, as you alluded to, and said, I'm going to move to you next, but just we're going to represent our part here, and maybe we'll dialogue a little on some of the nitty gritty. Yeah, it doesn't. He's very thin-skinned. This is an individual that demands essentially. This is, and we've addressed some of this, perhaps not in these terms exactly, but this has been addressed in roundabout or more broad terms on social media. We have challenged Grums to pony up, to give gamers and his backers, some of which he banned in the latest round of I'd say it's retributive actions or retaliatory actions against some of his critics. Which includes some of his backers, and some of which were simply asking questions. Where is our product after so much time? What is the state of the game? Very reasonable, erudite questions they matter to something that should be in evidence after all this time. There should be more evidence of work done, and more value provided. That's our consumerist perspective to his backers, and more veracity, including more information actually to the public. Based in fact, he's been representing this as being fully in development, with a possible vague lapse in time where there was some family issues and things like that, which may or may not have had a great degree of impact there. But these are the kinds of questions that we think better answers should be out there on where has the money been going, where is the product that's been promised up to date, and ultimately the issue is also one of conduct. As a publisher, we as a games publisher, Kern is extremely derelict in his duties in terms of responsiveness to those who have a direct financial stake in it, are expecting the game, and in terms of his treatment of critics, he's up there with some of the most restrictive and retaliation-seeking groups that he actually would seek to criticize. They're part of what touched off Gamergate 2, just to delve into it very, very perfunctorily, is there was a consultancy, a game publisher adjacent consultancy, basically a third party. Sweet Baby Inc. is the name, who had a member of their staff who took it upon themselves to kind of police the output of an individual gamer who was creating a list. He created a list based on certain products that he believed that this group was affiliated with, and so he noticed that there was issues there that he didn't like with the games, and he published it. And their response, one of the staffers, was to go after him personally, try to get his accounts canceled. This is just to the side of and some background here. What Grums on X, which is his name he goes by on the X platform, what Kern has done, using this as a vehicle. That's correct. The name is Cabrutus. The chat. Thank you, Leo. Yeah, Cabrutus is his name. He was targeted in that incident, and we're dead set against that. We're dead set against abuse of power, abuse of authority, abuse of platform, and targeting and targeted harassment. Whether it comes especially on the corporate citizen side, from any kind of business or industry. And also just in the broader community, you can't have that. That's nothing that I think gamers are associated with in general. I very much reject the characterizations by more or less mainstream media. It's been both. That gamers are kind of bad and malign people because we like video games, among other things. The issues there are, is there an overreach on the part of industry or industry adjacent figures, and that very much we believe is true in Gamergate 2. In its genesis, there's free speech issue there, which we don't have time for, but ultimately Cabrutus was subject to mistreatment and kind of mass reporting, the kind of and other things which we vociferously reject, and on industry side, and we certainly also reject where it's applicable from any of the gaming community, where it's applicable. Not often that it is. So that's the issue there. On the back of that, Kern decided to, and he was a late declared sympathizer, supporter of Gamergate 1, as you mentioned, T-Man. He kind of has been riding the coattails of whatever he could to, in my opinion, infame himself, and keep this putative game, which is not in evidence, funded. And there are those who suspect at this point in time, and there has been growing concern that this advocacy, which he's so busy with on X on a day-to-day basis, which is concerned, has the outline of being concerned about, games having woke content in it, right? They may have LGBT themes in them. They may have, they basically, they have things that people could criticize artistically, but in the long run, the games themselves tend to be bad and disrespectful treatments of their canon. There's many things that go into it. There's many things that go into it, but he seems to be using those as vehicles, kind of just to keep this whole thing going, in my opinion, for him on this game project, and that's very unfortunate, both for those who have principal interests in some of the causes that he seems to champion. And it's definitely a loser for his backers and the gaming public that might otherwise benefit from seeing his work. Not to mention the example he's setting, which I think we could each speak to just from an example standpoint as a developer and publisher. It's not a very good one. It's not a very good one, and yeah, without further ado, Sid, I'd like to hear what you have to say on Kern and about that.
Excellent.
Be my guest.
Right. So with Mark Kern and Grums and Ember, for a long time, actually something I had forgotten about for a long time, I was a subscriber for the Ember game because I had known Mark Kern over a period of several years before this, and I knew who he was, and he still seems, for the most part, when he's not being thin-skinned about things, he seems to generally be a very affable person, very likable in that regard. When he's, or at least he was. So I had subscribed to it, and then I had forgotten that I had a monthly subscription to that game for an exceptionally long period of time, until I started having to go back through and figure out what all I was spending money on so I could stop spending money on it. And I came across that, and I was like, huh, I didn't even recall that was a thing. So I attempted to cancel my subscription, and I couldn't, because the only way you could do it was through the website. And every time I attempted to cancel the subscription, it threw up a 405 error and could not proceed. And I tried that for about 2 weeks. I was like, okay, well, it's a bug with the website. They'll fix it. Yeah, 2 weeks goes by, and it's still the exact same error. So I go join his Discord. I contact one of his moderators because I don't want to hound him directly over something that's probably a minor thing. And I reach out to them and explain what was going on. And they said that they would get in touch with Mark and get it figured out. Then another month goes by, and I don't hear anything back. And I get charged for the subscription again. Whereas in that conversation with the mod, they had stated that they would get my subscription canceled for me, so I wouldn't have to worry about it, which obviously did not happen. So I went back to them and messaged the moderator. Let another week go by, did not receive a response back from that moderator. So I reached out to, I decided to put the Ember team on blast, as it were, on social media for this happening. And apparently Mark had attempted to get back to me, but I had my... Also, something forgotten by me was I had my Discord DM set to message request for all. So his message to me went into message requests, but it was only a week prior to when I had put him on blast on social media. Anyways, so I get in touch with Mark and we talk about the subscription, and I start asking him questions about the game because he started saying some things that put me into journalistic mode. So I started querying him about a bunch of things. On July 22nd of last year, actually I can give the exact time step. It was 7:47 p.m. While in discussion with that, I told Mark that because of everything that's happened, I have to seriously consider him for the Dirty Devs list, which, you know, if anyone who follows my channel, I have a series on there which is called Dirty Devs, which is where I call out the more egregious examples of game developer malfeasance, as it were. One thing Mark did say was, Sid, take a look at our progress in the next 45 days, and then you can ask me more. And I said, okay, for you, I'll give you that leeway, a month and a half.
All right.
Well, that was in July 22nd of last year. I still haven't started my video yet. But over the course of that 45 days, the progress over that 45 days was completely non-existent. Nothing had changed there. And for someone who's supposedly seriously working on a game, even if you're a solo developer, you should be able to have some form of update, even if it's back-end stuff to be able to inform your backers about. There should be some sort of work being conducted there in some way.
Absolutely.
That's never communicated, and that's a very common problem with Mark when it comes to Ember's development. And it's getting close to a decade now, and all we have is like alpha version 0.7 of the, or actually not even 0.5 of the demo. And the
Yeah.
demo,
Yeah.
which he said, here's the demo just the other day, which ironically comes off of the back of him getting called out severely over his apparent involvement in activity regarding adult furry content on the internet.
Oh. Whoa.
And some of that seems to overlap and coincide with the timeline of the 2-year hiatus that he took as well. At one point, Mark had blocked me, although he later unblocked me, because I asked the specific question. So, Mark took a 2-year hiatus because of medical issues, for all intents and purposes, that affected his kids, plural. So, it made me beg the thought: what medical condition would affect multiple children to the degree that would require a 2-year hiatus? I couldn't think of anything. So I posited the question, and Mark flipped his lid. Still have no idea what it was, nor do I expect an answer, because that would be delving into personal life and that would be inappropriate. But it's curious nonetheless when you honestly nail down and think about it. What could possibly cause that for more than one child at the same time over a 2-year period?
Real quick, something about that incident. So I don't think that he flipped his lid. I think what happened is he saw what you said and went, "Oh, this is a perfect chance for me to turn this around on him," and then
Probably,
flipped
yeah.
his lid.
Most likely, yes.
Yeah.
There's been a few videos made by other content creators out there. I know McDizzle Gaming, he did a fantastic video on breaking down the life and history of Ember and Mark's development of it, and along with that, Mark's previous time at other studios as a developer, where he was fired as CEO and all sorts of other things. Generally, what I expect is with this most recent demo release that he's done, I personally believe that he's done this to help dodge the current wave of criticism. As there's a very old phrase called outdating the outrage, which means you move on to another topic and get people talking about that instead of what they were talking about before, without ever having to address it, without ever having to deal with it. That's just what you do. We've seen it countless times with Electronic Arts and numerous other studios. That is just what they tend to do. They're very adept at that. But to this date, now coming on 9 years later, we have a very, very, very incomplete version of an alpha build, where the demo, he had stated once upon a time, would only take 2 months. 2 months to create, and yet it's taken this long, and this is the best he can come up with. It's frankly frustrating, both at a gamer level and at a journalistic level,
I want to
because
also
the last thing you want is for a game to fail. No one ever wants a game to actually fail, because it would benefit everyone if it were to become a success. But people like Mark have to make it a success, and that won't happen as long as he doesn't work on it.
I want to give a little bit of
Here.
context for his game stuff. So I began learning how to develop games with Unreal Engine, which is what Grums is using for this game. And I only had November, December, January, a little bit of February. So like 3.5, 4 months of about 2 to 4 days a week when I was learning stuff. The things I was seeing in his game, a lot of stuff made me think either one, oh, I know what the problem is. How did he not fix this? This is a very quick, easy fix if you've had 25, 30 years experience in the business. And other stuff that made me go, I don't even understand how this happens. Like
Well,
somebody had
because
to like change defaults to make this go bad.
Because the majority of time he spent as a game developer, he wasn't actually developing games, he was managing people.
All right. He's
And
from
he keeps
middle.
trying to make it seem otherwise.
He's middle
team lead.
management.
Yeah, middle management. And that's the thing with the game, the state of the game. Like certain parts you can tell are original and wholly made. Like when in this game, it's about mechs versus monsters or aliens or kaiju, whatever you want to go with.
The Sihu.
The Sihu, yeah. You can see certain things with the mechs when they land and they slide direction based on the direction you go at. You hit the ground at. You can tell that's wholly original. The mech itself was a built model. The new Sihu animations are no good, but they're there. He made them. But then certain things like the default running and sprinting animation when you were moving around on the mech, it just looks like the placeholder first time animation that Unreal Engine 5 offers. Flight looks like, I couldn't say for certain, but it looks like a pre-bought asset for very, very basic like testing of a game. And this like then begs the question of, he's admitted to upper echelon. He's managed to collect 600,000 all in for the project. It begs the question, where did this money go? And I have managed to directly ask Mark or Grums, did you spend any of that backer money on the 265 tax lien? He has since said no. Whether or not you believe that
he has actually said that all of the money is going towards the project and none of it has gone towards him.
Exactly,
Yeah,
which
those
is
are
why
two very definitive statements. And
But he is an employee of Crixa Games, and so he is still paid a salary from Crixa Games.
I'm not familiar with them.
Crixa Games is the LLC that he's running to for Ember's development.
Then how is Crixa making money?
Crixa Labs, Crixa Games.
If we might, the project formerly known as Ember. Please continue.
Now, I admittedly said 100% it could be, through salaries that he's then skirting that answer. 265,000 or a sizable portion of that would not, undisclosed, go into certain liens and not to the project would be pretty questionable on a very gray area of legality there, I would believe. I think it's not liable or defamatory to say that. That's, if that is where the money went, that would be you would start getting into dodgy territory.
Seems a little unbelievable.
It would be
right? Strange credulity that maybe it didn't factor in that's where it went, speculatively speaking.
Yeah.
Well, also, if you think about it, $600,000 for an adult claiming they're working full time over the course of 9 years is, it's sub $100,000 a year salary.
Yeah. Speaking, so I appreciate everybody's perspectives on this. A very, very good roundtable on frankly a very many-sided issue. Right? We have the dev hat. We have the publisher hat that this individual is wearing. We have the Gamergate champion mantle that they're trying to some people would say appropriate. I think T-Man, I think you and I are going to agree that that's not safe to award or to trust Kern with based on a number of factors. The failure to deliver seems to be kind of across the board. There is
one opinion I have gained in the past couple of weeks, and I'm curious if anybody else either already holds this or is starting to hold this opinion, and that is that when Mark developed this game with this whole fundraiser thing in the beginning, he never actually intended to finish the game, and it was his means of paying the tax lien and then some.
Well, it's all hypothetical. Like
that's non-generous.
It's
reading,
a very,
as long as we say it's conjecture. I mean, but
it's a very easily it's a very fair supposition to make, especially considering the complete lack of progress over the better part of a decade. Whereas, bear in mind also, the funding for this game was intended to be piecemeal. Like, get this much money to do this, then we'll crowdfund to do this, then we'll crowdfund to do this. The last round of crowdfunding was to create the demo that he said would take 2 months, and the crowdfunding was completed. Oh God, when was it? I think it was 2016 or 2018, one or two.
16.
The Milestone 3 demo for crowdfunder was 2018, I believe.
2018, yeah. And then that crowdfunding was completed, and in addition to that, he's had the subscriptions and the Patreon and all that stuff funneling him money all the while. So I had been harping on him constantly. Where's your demo? Why isn't your demo done? Where's your demo? And yesterday or the day before, he threw out, was it? Yeah, he threw out day before yesterday. This is the demo, even though it's not. It's a partial, and it doesn't actually meet the criteria laid out by him during that crowdfunding phase.
Yeah, or by conventional, acceptable. So I want to delve in, sit a little bit with you, and maybe we can monologue interchangeably on this. The issues here are many. From a fiduciary standpoint, all right. Not that these things are required in the context of the very voluntary. It's not a corporate, right? We're not talking about actual investors, but we're talking about backers, which are the next best thing. It's just more informal. There's been a complete I think we could broadly agree, lack of transparency. Okay.
Absolutely.
What would you say on that? And anyone jump in here?
Oh, absolutely. 100% complete lack of transparency. If that were the case, the House of Cards would probably come crumbling down. Because there are long stretches, very long stretches of no work being accomplished on the game whatsoever.
Okay.
Whether he was on hiatus or no. Even as a solo, you can watch tutorials and figure out how to do a thing and still be able to publish more updates and more meaningful content than Mark has.
Well, let's get into the technical aspect of it. So I do have a technical background. I have presently and have had my own independent businesses. In the case of my vocation, it's IT work principally. I do consult more broadly on technology, so I have a fair basis and background to make evaluations of production processes that are computer technical related. I don't claim concentration on development work, but I have observed over decades development work, consulted, worked around developers, acted as liaison between management and developers, overseen projects that involve development components. So I have some idea of these things. Not necessarily in a high corporate environment, but also there too. So the production length is it's stupendous. The only other game, and it's really without exaggeration here, the only other game that I'm aware of that had a development timescale like this is what eventually released as Duke Nukem Forever. And I have intimate familiarity with that title because I was one of the people waiting for that to release, and that had a 12 year cycle to release, and with many caveats in there. But needless to say, it is the longest running game that was ever in development. It's like a world record.
Unfortunately, that's already been surpassed by both Star Citizen and Yandere Simulator.
Well, with release, though, I believe in the Star Citizen, although it was not a complete product. But those are interesting.
Well, no,
caveats.
Star Citizen still has yet to release, nor has Squadron 42, which was originally the Chris Roberts project. Star Citizen was birthed from that.
Hold on a second on that. But go ahead.
But no, that has been in development since 2013, and still, I believe Squadron 42 is set to be released in about 2 years. And Star Citizen will probably be in development in perpetuity.
Okay.
Yare
Okay. No,
Simulator.
no.
That's
I did get
another
that
couple
confused. I
ones,
did confuse that with another title. Yeah, Star Citizen is legendary for its protracted development cycle.
but
Um, well, okay. So I can't say we can't say then in that case that it is. It is one of the longer running ones.
most definitely so. Yes.
Um, so all right. Yeah, that's those are all ones to keep an eye on. And there are differences. There are caveats here in terms of he has not necessarily had the team or the scale to accomplish what he's looking to do. The as a matter of best practices, there aren't really any in evidence here. The issues are across the board, from a production standpoint, from a accountability standpoint, and frankly, the his lack of focus to the game when it comes to these so-called GamerGate issues. Um, to all appearances, I would say it appears to be a diversion from his lack of ability to complete the game. I'd like to have a more generous reading on that, but based on the evidence at hand, it's really hard to view it as anything but that. Um,
Well, speaking of the more technical aspects, in this recent build of the in progress demo, there were three items that were added. That's it. There was volumetric fog.
mhm,
There was words are escaping me here. Lumen lighting,
right,
and then there was the swarmers, the Sihu, where the character models were actually where the character models for them was actually I keep referring to them as Sihu. Isn't Sihu Star Citizen? I might be
No, no. See who
misremembering that.
is his enemy type. They're the ones that look kind
Oh,
of like
okay.
elites.
I
Yeah.
was remembering it correctly then. Yeah, where the actual character model for the generic single character model was added to the game with basic rigging. Whereas, I went and checked and I was like, okay, well, I know that I knew for a fact that both volumetric fog and lumen lighting are out of the box Unreal Engine 5 tools. They exist. You don't have to create them. They're already there. You just have to turn them on and adjust their settings to where you like it. Where I
right.
looked up YouTube tutorials for volumetric fog, and one tutorial I found showed how to implement it, and the entire video was a minute and 48 seconds in length, and that was not sped up as they went through the settings and the adjustments. That was just the entire length of the video. For lumen lighting, there are tutorials that range from a couple of minutes up to about 28 minutes in length. Almost all of them are less than a half hour in total
I
for
can
just
give
the
more
two.
detail. I can give more detail on the lighting stuff. So for
Okay.
lumen
Okay.
lighting, I haven't went into detail about how to do it specifically. One of the tutorials I did, they had me do it on the side just so I can move along with what I was doing. And so to get just the basics of it, that's like just something you can just do on the side as you focus on something else.
Right.
And
Right.
so the 28-minute one is here's all the fancy things you can do with the lumen lighting. And looking at the lighting of his game, fancy is not the word I would be using.
No, no, it's all
No,
default.
not at
It's
all.
out of the box. I want to avoid delving too deep into the technicalese of it because not everyone that watches the
Well,
stream will be appreciative. But that's absolutely right. The assets that are there, the mechanics that are evident as being operative in the game, they seem to they're pretty much out of the box. It's pretty much off the shelf.
well,
And
yeah,
and
pretty
so
pretty
that
much
that
with these
doesn't.
changes that were made that he made a big deal out of could
Mhm.
be done by anyone even remotely familiar with Unreal Engine 5
Right.
in less than a couple hours.
Right. There's no deep technical. Speaking to the technical underpinnings of it, there's no deep technical knowledge needed for development of the character and type we see in these so-called demos, which really, as you say, Sid, these are like pre-alphas or extremely primitive early alphas, to the point where they're more like prototypes. They're basically a playtest model, which is essentially if you reduce your playtest to a single lane, right? We're talking like 2D from 3D. Yes, you can make something appear to be there, but it doesn't hold up with any versatility
Hmm.
in the way that a piece of software should, like a game should.
And
So,
Ocular Malice made a very in the chat, which, hey, Ocular, good to see you.
hey, Oculus.
A very very good point there, that with the volumetric fog and the lighting and things like that, it does very much appear like all he did was turn them on. There was no tweaking or anything like that involved. They were just enabled, and that's
Right,
it.
right, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So this is for a production 8 years in development. Something's very wrong, simply stated. It's not hard to see. A layperson can see it if they have a background in gaming, like a lay gamer, don't have to know about development cycle. The explanations that have been given essentially they don't hold up, and any kind of criticism that is leveled, any kind of inquiry in terms of what he's actually doing with the resources. He does have a continued monthly funding scenario he has for this, are deflected and diverted to you're with you're with the bad people. You're with people who are ideologically incorrect. You clearly want to burn and damage a Tesla vehicle, which is, I mean, it's facially ludicrous from where I sit. I happen to be a fan of them. That's, it's neither here nor there. I'm not going to speak to the personality behind them, but I think these things are deflections on his part. I think it's overblown, and I believe that why all of the why all of the sensational deflections and basically impugning the motives of your detractors if you have a product to show. Okay, if you have something there, what is all this about? And so it seems that that's really at issue. There is a cult of personality also in evidence around Kern. I'm just going to lay that out there. And that does not contribute to, again, to the confidence that there's actually something there to be released. Not to mention, as T-Man said, as leader of a movement that's based on fixing gaming, making gaming great, bringing it to a place where we all love and enjoy it. Maybe some of that's throwback, but certainly going forward, like actually has a wide appeal to audiences. He's not handling that. He's not handling any of it. So I think that's going to become more apparent in coming months as some of the momentum from the outrage and the reaction, rightfully so, of Caprutus being mistreated, is filters out of public consciousness, and people start to see this this charade to all appearances for what it is. So if anyone has any other comments on that, I think that we can close the door on that particular topic. I also know that Mello, you might need to leave in the near future from the table. So if you want to jump in here for anything before you need to go.
I just wanted to say, because I'm going to literally shoot off in 1 minute. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed a lot of these conversations. I've enjoyed listening to all of your guys' perspectives as well. I've enjoyed reading along with the chat as well. I've been paying attention to that throughout the live stream. It's been really, really insightful. I'm pleased at the wide breadth of topics that have been covered, and I feel like it's been really, really constructive and helpful, even at points where we disagree. We've disagreed respectfully with each other.
Definitely. Really appreciate having you. It has been a great discussion. We do have a few more items that we're going to go through, which you're welcome to. We can recap maybe on a future table. But it's been great having you. If anyone else wants to say goodbye.
Yep. I actually should have gone about 30 minutes ago. I just noticed the time. Oh boy.
Okay.
All right. So I am the T-Man, everyone's favorite Houston-based anime-themed tea store. Just go to dragonsfletcher.com to see what I do. I talk about actually creating stuff. I've been creating teas, coffee, soaps, shampoo and conditioner, and God knows what else for about 10 years now. So I've been in the game of creation for a while now. And I'm trying to expand into other forms, but like I said, the cult of personality thing, I don't have it. I am not as... I can't even call Grumps charismatic. I don't even understand that. But
vindictive, maybe.
Yeah, I don't have the slop mentality, so I can't communicate on a slop level.
Yeah. No,
And
it seems like that's kind of what we get, whether it's the tweets or the so-called demos.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
just real
It's
quick,
not really versatile that way.
just a quick little shout. If you want to know why Grumps tweets so much, go to his profile and do the search. Type into word subscribe, and just scroll down, and you will see.
Yep.
All right.
I
Yep.
think
And
I
so
think there's
with
a
that-
profit motive in there, and it may not be for video games.
And so with that, I need to get going. Farewell, everybody.
All right, it's great having you, T-Man
Goodbye.
and Mello. You have a great night. I'll bring up, I think, some of the points here on games that that deserve shout-outs, if that's okay with you, as far as the ones you've listed.
Totally fine. And I will just plug myself before I shoot off as well. You can join my Steam community group, Sentinels of the Store. We alert you to bad actors on Steam or instances of review manipulation, game theft, stuff that maybe you might not be aware of on a surface level. You can also follow me on X, on Blue Sky, at Mellow Online 1, and at Steam Sentinels, and also exclusively on X, at Grums is Right. Whichever you prefer. Follow as many or as few of those, or just pretend I don't exist. I'm totally fine with all of those options.
Yeah, I just want to add a little comment that Steam Sentinels do great work. I've been worked with them and observing their work for many years, cleaning up the Steam marketplace. There's plenty of scam artists out there, scam artists that need to be drawn attention to, and there's stuff put out of the market so that people don't get suckered on that. And I mean, that's basically just looking out for each other, looking out for gamers. That's where it's at. So strongly supportive of your mission, and T-Man, I love T. So hope people check out your site. And
I also have a YouTube channel myself, Dragon's Treasured. If you want to see things that are a little bit higher quality in terms of just what we've been getting, well, I try and do that. Whether or not I succeed, I'll leave that up to you.
Yes, yeah, good content over there. The Dragon's Treasure. So, all right. I'll go ahead and allow you guys to log out of the stream, and definitely welcome to join on the next one. I think we'll continue here on our topics, and great having you, Mello and T-Man.
Thank you very much. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the conversation. Thanks very much.
Will do. Have a great night. All right, Sid and Asmer, we can close with the topics that we had. How's your time frame?
Should be good.
I'm fine. Yeah.
All right, great. I mean, not to beat a dead horse here, but is there any recap? Because Grumps occupies a lot of space in the Gamergate sphere. Okay, and do we have any thoughts on that? Do you want to recap on anything, or is that a done topic?
Pretty much, that would just start delving into the whole social agenda stuff. That that would be, to my mind, that would be basically beating a dead horse. The battle lines in that regard are pretty much drawn. Most people will not be able to change the minds of anyone else.
Right.
Those that are on one side are very much against those that are on the other side, and that's just how it is. And most of us are out here in the middle, just wondering where the decent games are at.
100%. And I mean, for my part, I had a fair-minded approach to not really remembering him from Gamergate 1, which I was a participant in back in the day. Had a very fair-minded approach to the guy, and the polarization, frankly, the subtext of partisanship, whether we're talking like literal or figurative, because there's a bit of both, unhealthy for the discussion to the extent that it fosters it. I think it's not fostering it. That's bad one way, and just kind of the division being sown. People are talking about infighting. Actually, he's posted on that. I think he's the chief author of infighting, as it were, if people really are out for good products or out for good games. Not an effective leader in my opinion. I think we'll leave it at that. So I'd like to get to the video games, right? That's what we're all here for. So when it comes down to it, there's a lot of names out there that we could look at for most improved, or most needing work, either in the AAAs or the indie spaces. And so I'd like your guys' picks for which companies are winning and which are kind of losing, which need to do better, and all of that. So Nasmer, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm kind of going a little bit of out of left field here in terms of winning, but I was going to point to the indie development scene as a whole. Whereas before, most people saw it as just kind of like earthbound copy and paste RPG makers, 2D pixel kind of games, which there's nothing wrong with that. People are starting out making their games, or even maybe more advanced designs are being used to make RPGs with that. We are now seeing with the utilization of Unreal Engine 5, as much as some people try to disparage it, Unreal Engine 5, Unity, and even the Godot engine, they are coming out with titles that are just on par with AA and even sometimes AAA standards with what they were able to create. Some of the examples I had down was Anenra, which is a fighting beat 'em up game, kind of in the same kind of style as Devil May Cry, I would say. You've then got other developer teams making Engines of Destruction, which is kind of a more grounded version of Mech Warrior. And then one developer who is making Road to Vostok, which is a single-player Tarkov-like game, which is incredible what he's been able to achieve in such little time when during the Unity crisis, to catch everyone up, when Unity was charging indie games more money, he decided to switch and port his entire game over to Godot engine from Unity, which was quite astonishing for a lot of people, because they were like, I didn't even think that you were capable of doing things like that. But he was. So it's just showing that indie developers are like really making leaps and bounds in what they were going to be able to create. And when it comes to showcasing a game that I really recommend, I'm going to recommend one that just looks to be like an absolute game changer, AAA quality indie game.
Oh, that's a great site. That's a great site. Absolutely, looks to be a really interesting and it's a very technically fascinating game. Based on that, that's a lot of movement behind the scenes. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a good one.
Yep.
All right, Sid, you want to do a best of?
I only had two that I could think of, mostly because I haven't been able to take a look at a lot of newer games in recent months. But two of them really stood out for me when I sat down and gave it a good think. The first one is Manor Lords by Slavic Magic. Now, Manor Lords was released in early access in April of last year, and it's a medieval strategy city builder. It's being developed by a single guy, and so far it is fantastic, where you basically build a medieval town where you have militia and men at arms, and you're battling for control of the region with an NPC lord or with other players. And it's a very interesting, chill sort of game. And it's fantastically well done, especially when you consider that it's only one dude making all of this. And it's come out with some very good, very consistent updates since its release. And I'm very much looking forward to its future. So anyone who's interested in a medieval city builder like that, then you definitely couldn't go wrong with that one. The other one I was thinking of is the game Icarus. Icarus is something that I've been on the fence for a very, very long time. Honestly, I have nearly 1,000 hours into this game. And even at the 900-hour mark, I still couldn't figure out if I liked the game or not. I honestly could not make up my mind, and I couldn't figure out why. It's a very interesting game. It is definitely a survival game, where you are an explorer that drops from orbit on a planet where human terraforming went wrong. And so it's got all sorts of problems with it, with biomes, with extreme weathers and things like that. And you, as a prospector, you're attempting to gather rare materials or rare minerals and things, which
Mm-hmm.
also serves as a basis of currency in the game. There are no microtransactions or anything like that, but the currency is used to purchase equipment that you can drop with when you go and take on missions. And there are a very large number of missions. The difficulty with this game, even though I did decide that I actually do like it, is that it is a very incomplete and broken up game where you do need uh, the Styx expansion pack and the New Frontiers expansion to at least be able to get the full experience of the game. The base game itself is not what the game should be, I think. So you do very much need those expansions, which makes it a fairly expensive game. But this game is also made by Rocketworks, which are the guys that also made Stationeers. And yeah, it's a pretty decent game. They also have consistently for a very long time come out with weekly updates with changes and improvements that they make to the game, new additions that they include in it. Technically, you should consider this early access, even though it is being published as a full release currently. But the amount of continued work they make on the game is impressive and encouraging. So if you're interested in a survival game that does allow for multiplayer so you can play with your friends, then it might be worth checking out. There's no real PvP. It's more of a PvE style game, but yeah, I think it's pretty decent.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, that I do like a good survival game, and yeah, sometimes if it takes you a while to decide if you like the game or not, sometimes that could be a really good thing. Uh, occasionally not. You ultimately decide you don't care for it. Um, which actually that's a fantastic segue. Or uh, connection to where I'm to what I'm going to discuss in the next segment. I'm gonna start with the good though, um, since we are in the good track. So let me just say my top one here. I do have it noted. I'm gonna go ahead and bring that back up. Um, I'm gonna say my top one. Well, I'm gonna actually I do know it off the top of my head. So um, for a mainstream, because I kind of gave us categories. So if you guys want to do a second one for outside of indie or outside of mainstream, I did one for each. I'm gonna say EA. Surprise to some, a little bit of a surprise to me even, because EA has they have a history and they made some really great games over time. Really great games, very popular games in many cases. And they've also certainly fallen down and fallen short with a number of other releases. Being a Command and Conquer fan, Command and Conquer series, something that started out with Command and Conquer Tiberian Dawn in the mid 90s,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 94, or somewhere
Yep,
around
I'm
there.
extremely familiar with Command and Conquer games.
You're a fan. I good. Well, hey, I they're some of the best. I mean, they're some of the best of the best. I mean, they're old school at this point, but they're. I mean, anyway. Did you catch the remaster? Might as well talk about it. Did you?
I most certainly did, yes.
Good. I
The
enjoyed it.
remasters they did were fantastic. Unfortunately, they were supposed to remaster all of them, but they copped out and only did a couple, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah. I wonder about the sales there. It's just my idle question on that. But I think they did pretty well. I don't know what they were expecting for that exactly, but I'd buy it for a friend. I think I already have. So, yeah, it's something it took a little while. It certainly took them a long time from when the series was like super current, and it's a great series. It's a great
It
game.
is. I One thing I did really enjoy was seeing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that they included.
Yes, yeah.
That was fantastic.
The studio, right? The cut, yeah. All the behind this exactly this cut footage. I mean,
because those were the good old days of FMV, and I wish that were to be brought back. I really do. Full motion video in video games, fantastic.
well,
I loved it.
I think you could. I mean, the way I look at it, they put more heart into it at that time. Like the production costs being what they were, especially then, there wasn't even digital video, right? It was trans. It was either the. It was FMV was one of the either the first digital, like live captured formats, or really early, container. Um,
No, it was pretty much, to my recollection, I believe it was the first.
Yeah, it might have been. It could be. It's probably worth GPTing, but whatever. It was real early. If it wasn't the first, it was super early, and they did a lot of good work on that. So yeah, I'm right with you. The behind the scenes, the background stuff, you get to see the actors and the production crew interacting, and the cast interacting, and just great, just great. What's his first name? Kukin. That's the actor who plays Kane. I think David. It's Kukin. Anyway,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
great. Actor who plays Kane. I think we're both looking it up.
I am.
We should give him credit. Joseph Kukin, right? That's the one.
Yeah, Joseph David Cookin.
Joseph
Yeah.
Kukin. What a guy. What a he played Kane to
He
the
was
hilt.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a fan of all of them. The gentleman I should acknowledge. I think Commander Shepard. He's since passed. So that was a few years ago. He passed away. Also a great actor. Didn't have as much screen time as Kane, but another solid actor. And FMB did capture them. That was back in the day. But yeah, easy to get starry-eyed about this stuff. Um, I love the original series. I actually do tend to play it on pixel mode, but the new art is very good. I can't really claim any partiality on this. Totally in the tank. A fan of Command and Conquer, in the tank even. And I'm glad they did the remaster. I'm glad that it is getting more attention as a series. Those are big wins. Those are big W's to me. It's been a few years, and they didn't do all of them. So I do hold out some hope and a little bit of expectation that they will. Um, those would be those would be very welcome. But the later ones also, you get the Red Alert 2 era and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
They are modern enough that they are pretty playable. Um, they have better UIs and stuff. So I could see why they may hold off on that. The
If you do like those sort of games, you might also, I don't know if you've heard of them or not, you could also check out the 8-bit series, the 8-bit armies, 8-bit hordes, 8-bit invaders.
I've heard of them. Yep,
Um,
the original, the
the,
principles behind Westwood. That's
yeah,
them.
there's no FMV or anything like that, but they're fun Command and Conquer and Warcraft like games that I love the story arc in there where they know that they're in a video game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've
It's
actually been
brilliant.
looking at that. So those are very cool. Yeah, they kept the spirit of it and made it like deliberately retro styled. That's impressive indie work from the founders of Westwood. Some of them who went on called 8-bit armies. Yeah, I'm very very fond of that work. Haven't really played it, but I like what I see there. Um, so circling back on EA, the other big win is they released the source code. They really like that's an epic W. They
They
released the
did.
source code to the original Command and Conquer. I think the original Red Alert, about 100% on that, and a couple other ones. I think they did Zero Hour as well. I gotta hand it to them for a big company, and especially one with their legacy of games and everything. It's really respectable. It's a big W. Gotta hand it to them. That stuff is amazing. It's really
I
great
mean, I
games.
could rate on your parade there, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, let them. EA will give them their moment there. Those are big W's. Big W's. So, um, yeah. And I think then our next one. I just to go around again. Is going to be needs improvement. What's the biggest L's or biggest losers in the gaming space that need to improve. and show better work all the way around. So I'll open that up, Nasper, if you want to speak on that.
Probably Warner Bros. Games. Uh, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, of the episode, the podcast, they had the propriety copyright or whatever it is for the Nemesis engine, and honestly, the potential of that just in the Middle Earth Shadow of War games, that alone made people love it. And if they actually worked upon that and expanded upon that technology and were able to apply it to let's say, for example, a Game of Thrones type game, then it could have been absolutely revolutionary in the level of detail with faction relationships. Like you've got multiple houses and people that you can all have a nemesis and allied system with. And I know for a fact that Warner Bros. Did have a Game of Thrones license, but they ended up using it for an iOS game. Of course, that's a pretty good use of their time.
Yeah.
And then they went with Back for Blood, Gotham Knights. They had a bit of a hit with Hogwarts Legacy, but then it was Mortal Kombat 1, the Arkham Asylum games released on the Nintendo Switch again, and then you see Suicide Squad kill the Justice League, Harry Potter Quidditch Champions, and it's just, at the moment, the entire studio is getting closed down now. If I believe that they're moving completely out of games. So,
yep.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I heard about that. I heard about
Yeah.
that. And
So Monolith, I think it was, wasn't it?
oh,
If you
that's
can correct me.
Monolith was under them.
Yeah, Monolith Games getting
That
shut down under that.
that was very sick. We recognized that in on the socials. Monolith's loss is it's a tragedy. That would be like just on a parallel. Maybe not on exactly the same parallel because ID is kind of unique. The makers of Doom ID very very unique because they're one of the they're one of the OGs, but not far behind in maybe the second generation of those type of studios. Is Monolith, and they put out Blood, which I love. This first person shooter, one of the best first person shooters ever made, and a variety of other games, solid games. Not all in my genres, but their loss as a legacy studio is just tragic and unnecessary. That's actually that might be a good inflection point to speak on some of the culture issues that intersect with this, because I believe they're working on a Wonder Woman game, I want to say.
They were.
Yeah. And if you looked at the performance and people that are in the entertainment information landscape, such as myself, some of you, some of the people in chat, we don't just look at games, right? We're all here for games, but the response to that was not tremendous. It really wasn't. There again, for example, She-Hulk, pointing out some ones that are just, they're not. There's a theme here, and I would like to say, of all the reasons that might go into it, I think execution is a big part of it. I think promotion may be part of it. There's a bunch of things that go into it, but at the end of the day, you have to ask. Firstly, and from a production standpoint, was this going according to plan? Was this going well? The Wonder Woman game was not. It was it's badly executed production. And then, where's the market? Is this going to land? How well is it going to land? And my feeling is it wasn't going to really land too well. So I think it kind of fell where it was. Any thoughts on that?
No, totally agree. I think that. Well, funny enough, the Wonder Woman game was apparently supposed to have the Nemesis system involved in that. I can't, in my mind's eye, imagine how they're going to use that compared to something like a Game of Thrones IP. But however, it just shows that it's kind of like directionless in what they were doing, and it was just whenever they had something pop off like a Hogwarts Legacy, it was completely fluke, random luck, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And where I'm saying is needs improvement. Like if Warner Bros. Are even to venture into games again, they got to have a plan with that Nemesis system. That's where I stand.
There's complete squandering of a very good backbone. Yeah.
It really is. Thing is, with the Nemesis system, it was actually very simplistic, but at the same time, very brilliant. Mostly because one thing that dealing with online games, multiplayer games, and things like that is the concept of creating your own narrative, as it were, um, which
Self-discovery.
is which is mostly wholly unique to multiplayer games. The thing with the Nemesis system is it allowed the introduction of that into a single player game, which no one has ever been able to broach that divide before. And it's yes, it's a simplistic system, but it's brilliant in thought, and they really should be taking full advantage of that. And they haven't used it at all. It's a shame.
Yeah, yeah. This is part of the issue with the big companies is um,
Emergent storytelling. Sorry, that was the term I was trying to think up, but the words just wouldn't come to me. Damn.
that's it. Yeah, emergent storytelling. Yeah, self-narrative crafting. I mean, that's open world has that. There's some of the better RPGs allow that. That's really important. I mean, that's player immersion and engagement 101 on some level. Not always easy to execute. It's a lot easier to say, but the games that do it and do it well are some of the best. I mean, you have your Skyrims and this sort of thing too. Some of it's more choose your adventure, but those are really good. I mean, those you really could dig in on. And that's the right way to do it. I think heavy-handed narratives from a creative standpoint, I don't see the market there as much. I think you could look at like a Veilguard or something like that as like there's more structured narratives, and it didn't offer the median player what they wanted. I think it would be a fair summation.
No,
Um,
not at all.
yeah, and so this is we want games to succeed. We're gamers. Dog crap doesn't benefit anyone, right? We don't need it. We want to see games that we want to play, or even if we don't want to play, that other people enjoy playing. Like I definitely get a vicarious thrill. I'm definitely like super happy for anyone that plays a game that's not in my genre, right? That I maybe normally not look at. If they love that game, I am thrilled for them. Like that does my heart good. There's absolutely every incentive. Now, I mean, yeah, we won't may throw crap at a certain game or genre we don't like, right? But on a fundamental level, I'm super happy for them, right? Even if I don't care for the genre, all right. I might never play the game, but I'm still happy for them. That's just how I am. I think a lot of gamers in general they can enjoy the thrill of delight, the joy on another gamer's face when they're enjoying a game in an arcade or something. You have different options. I think that's pretty common actually. And the alternative of you know denouncing games, of criticizing games, like in general, that you have to really kind of go out of your way to get that response, I think, or make some mistakes along the way. That's not mainstream game commentary. Now, that doesn't mean people are always nice in the feedback they give, but at the same time, and have a good night, Ben. Appreciate you stopping by. I do think that the um, most gamers are pretty honest, right, about what they want. Even if they're a little raw in that. And I think a lot of the problem is it's around a lack of willingness to embrace the feedback, lack of willingness to give the customers what they want, and that's
To,
a problem for everybody.
to jump off your point there, I also think I agree that it's a lack of taking in feedback, and I get a sense, maybe Sid can agree with me here because he's a bit more clued in, but I get a sense of gatekeeping from a lot of devs in mainstream stream studios. So the consumer or the customer is can be quite uninformed on what systems and mechanics and how these games are made,
Hmm.
and then it's lorded over them that you don't even understand,
Oh,
and that information is kind of like it's you'd have to go out of your way to learn it.
right.
Whereas if a developer was more willing to explain the situation, and how this operates, which is what happens, I find, more in the indie scene, then a lot of like these problems could be mitigated. These conflicts online.
Yeah, well, a lot of that basically boils down to because with indie games, they live and die by the communities they build around their games, and so they, by their very nature, they have to be far more interactive than you will ever see with a larger development studio, to where they will take the time to explain what's going on and why and things like that because it's the lifeblood of their game. It keeps keeping people informed as an indie is crucial. With the double A's and triple A's, yes, very much they do tend to they take a far more haughty, sometimes even holier than thou attitude about such things, whereas a lot of times they tend to be dealing with people that are far more intelligent than they are, um, and continually tend to talk down to people as a result because I know this thing and you don't. Well, if you took 15 seconds to explain it, then we could all understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point to make.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You said, Nasmer, you said a mouthful there. Absolutely. And Sid, agree with everything you said as well. Um, the elitism, right? Talking about aloof and devs that aren't doing the right stuff. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the AAA space and people that are wannabe AAA at this point in time, and that's no good. That's no good. Yeah, get good scrub. Okay, that's just shit talk. All right, that's something you say in a game. And granted, there are skill issues in real life and in gaming. These things are they factor in. But when you have enough people, right? If you have a sizable enough cross section that where there's smoke there's fire, right? If you have a sizable enough cross section of people that are coming up with certain complaints of bug issues, advancement issues in terms of however the game is set up, the economy in the game, any number of other things. That's something you should look at and listen to. It doesn't necessarily mean you comply with whatever the feedback is, but you evaluate it, right? That, and you give it a fair hearing, and you don't shit on the people giving the feedback. Traditionally in business, a lot of things have changed with the way corporations, corporate officers, and the press act since the turn of the century. I could say that I've seen both sides of it almost equally at this point. And yeah, the lack of decorum and just bad practices, bad conduct, bad practices kind of goes together at some level. This is really sad to see. I'm going to nail to the gaming press. That's kind of a standout one there in general, but also just of a lot of the mid-level, mid-tier studios. I'm going to say not all the big boys. They don't all do that. A lot of the indies definitely don't do that. And there's definitely good examples and worse examples of that. I'm going to lay out my one of my worst examples on that note of major studio publisher, and that's going to be I'm going to call them out Paradox Studios. There's a whole lot more beyond naming them that I can go into as to the whys. I think we'll probably close in the next little bit here. So I think we're in a wrap up phase. I don't want to delve into that too deeply, but I will say that they share some of the worst practices of rejecting feedback, of suppressing actual feedback. I can qualify that, and continually pumping out product, I was going to say content, in the form of DLCs and things. And in particular, the headline example there is going to be Stellaris, which, speaking of games that you take a long time to decide if you like or not, well, imagine a game that's I can't even definitely over 5 years, we're approaching 10 years old. That's never finished. never finished a work in progress, and didn't even deliver on some of the fundamentals that it was promoted as in the first place. We're talking, three different types of faster than light travel, some of the game structure and economy stuff, stuff that shouldn't be, load bearing stuff that really shouldn't be changed after the fact or moved after the fact. As advertised, probably should be included. And they're a dozen, maybe 20 DLCs deep. They don't miss a either semi-annual or quarterly.
And most of the DLCs are terrible.
Most of them are basically fan art tier, and that's most of them are just that, and the rest of them are deck chairs. In a metaphor, it may or may not be placeless at the moment, but it's window dressing, is what it is, and it literally even. I mean, their UX, it's arbitrary UX changes. How's that? How is it? Anyway, I have my criticisms and gripes there. So yeah, Paradox, one of the worst major, from a number of standpoints. Also, some people may say there's a fun deficit, but we'll get into that when we have the time for that one. That's kind of a big one.
Well, with Stellaris, I'm looking at my playtime there, and it's sitting at 2,953.2 hours.
So
currently.
you
I know, yeah.
I I think I stopped short officially, right? The logged in playtime around 8 900, and after so many years, and anyway, some strong feels there. Not my favorite company. Wanted it to be maybe my favorite game. Hence the disappointment. It's not, but there are cult of personality issues that factor into actually to that company. And yeah, there's tribalism. There's tribalism, and is that helping gaming? Is that helping gamers? Is that doing what we, doing is that doing what we want to get done? I have some strong skepticism. I have some strong skepticism based on the results. Based on the results. So,
Tribalism is never a good thing.
not unless the game is Star Siege Tribes. But yeah, to your point, it's a serious point. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And it's been impacting it in a bad way. I do have some positive indie examples, or a positive indie example I'd like to roll out, which is best of the best in the indie space, or relaunched major, which is Apogee. You guys may be familiar with Apogee from all the stuff they used to do.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's Scott Miller's outfit, and he's relaunched it as an indie, very successful indie so far. They're behind Turbo Overkill, very good FPS. So I'm a big fan of that. They're also relaunching. Let's see, they're relaunching. They did Crystal Caves in HD, which is a cute platformer. And what I want to see is they're relaunching, or have relaunched very recently. I think it's still due out. Raptor: Call of the Shadows, which is an arcade fighter simulator shooter, which is a lot of fun. So very very fond of their work, and they started out small, kind of just re-releasing some things, actually, just as they were basically DOSBox re-releases, and working on platformers, and now they're up to Turbo Overkill, and redoing Raptor in kind of a pseudo 3D, I think, still top down, but HD fashion. So that's Ocular. You're right, Secret Agent Man HD. Apogee has a wonderful back catalog. So this is, the stuff that they're doing now is also very impressive. So they've come up a lot. That's going to be my most improved, my W for an indie. And does anyone have any second one they want to tag on with that?
I actually have a slightly different one, not most improved or something, but most looking forward to.
Hey, that's good for me. Yeah.
The game is called Exodus. It's in development right now by Archetype Entertainment. They do have demos and trailers and lore videos that they've been producing. They also have gameplay footage that they've released. A lot of people are fans of old BioWare. BioWare games like Dragon Age, Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2.
The classic glory days.
The glory days. The vast majority of the people that worked for BioWare are no longer there, but quite a few of them ended up at Archetype Entertainment. Archetype Entertainment is comprised majorly of former BioWare devs, including their writer is Drew Karpyshyn, which is the man who wrote Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3.
Fantastic.
He was the lead writer for all of the best games that BioWare ever created, and he's the lead writer for this game. And so, if there was any game that I would in recent memory that I would ever be interested in, this one actually has me genuinely excited to see. I'm extremely hopeful for this one.
Oh, that sounds great. That sounds like a great it definitely something that is worth looking forward to. So, Nasmer, do you have anyone to stand out as far as you want to tag on?
For the indie scene, the game Dragon Twin. It started off as a solo project from one developer in February last year, and is in the past 3 months grown to a full dev team with developers with previous AAA experiences. And the premise of the game is a dragon riding not simulator, but you're a dragon rider, and imagine kind of like a real-time Bannerlord style game. That's kind of the premise that I can provide. It's
Is it meant to be multiplayer online, or it's solo play?
It's going to be a solo player game. There may be, like, obviously because it's only a year in, there's thoughts and flirtations with an idea of co-op, but for the most part it is solely single player. And imagine Bannerlord, but the transition from the overworld to the battle map is seamless. So you're in real time moving across the world, and the maps will be roughly 400 times the size of Skyrim. What's really encouraging me about this developer, Sideneus, is that he gives a weekly update and has released a demo. He was able to release a demo within 9 months for the movement and flight demo, and I've played it, and it was very promising. And soon he's made promises soon for an early prototype of the battle simulator as well. So all good signs, the opposite of some of the dirty devs that we've got problems with.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, excellent indications there. It sounds like, and yeah, what a contrast. It almost speaks for itself. It's like you don't. There's no mistaking it. The direction of a good production and dev, and those that don't quite get there or are going the wrong way. So I'm going to say my worst indie dev. I'm going to hold that out in the indie space. That's going to be Kern. It's going to be Mark Kern. I already spoke on it, but that's as far as an example goes. I can't think of one that's doing more in the wrong direction in the indie space, certainly with his profile or anything like it, any profile, and presently than he is. So that's going to be the most needs to be improved. I guess we'll see about that.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I do have a few examples that some of our table mates here left for us. I think I'll just read to momentarily. I think Mello has a concurrence on most needs improved indie dev as Kern, so that's in common.
You're going to be a Kern sweep today.
Not a real big surprise on that front, I think. And as far as the best, and this circles back to you mentioned Star Citizen, Sid, and I get them confused because one of them I own on Steam, haven't played. That's going to be No Man's Sky from Hello Games. That's the one I was thinking of. It did release. It was released as a late beta, and it came out diamonds, or at least much better. And that's not Star Citizen. Similar premises, different games and setups. So I do get them confused. That's what I was referring to earlier as a released game that was not where it needed to be. but it's come a super long way, and I'm going to credit Mello with pointing that one out. Actually, that's his most improved pick. So big credit to
It's
Mello
true.
on that.
When it comes to improvement, yeah, few game developers have taken such steps to dig themselves out of the pit they had dug themselves into than that development studio did, and very much all the props to them for doing so. Um, they very much overpromised and underdelivered at launch,
Yeah.
with outright lying about features that were included in the game. But they took the time, they did the work, and they got it to where it needed to be.
Yeah.
And very few games companies will do that nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they definitely deserve props for that.
110%. Yeah, biggest comeback and unexpected story arc, a little drama in development, but yeah, that's super good. A hard act to follow, but yeah, hey, let's get good games. Um, so yeah, I think we also got a vote for most needing work for the majors for Ubi from Mello, which I think again we have some. There's going to be some common consensus on those. Um, all right. So I think we're gonna wrap on this pretty shortly. Is there any topics that Nasmer or Sid that you feel like we didn't get to, should revisit or recap, or anything you wanna mention before we close?
Not at this time.
No, no, all good, all happy.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think we covered. I mean, we did cover a lot of ground here. And important topics stuff definitely needs to be discussed, and further discussion on a few of the points. Um, Perhaps we can reconvene the table again in the near future. I do appreciate your all's participation, and everyone in the chat. Do you before we go? Do you want to? Is there anything you want to rep as far as your own channels, own media, or anything else? Sid?
Sure, why not? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am Sid Alpha. It's been very much a pleasure to be here. You can catch me over on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sid Alpha, where eventually I will get back to making videos. I promise. I know it's been a hot minute since one's been made. I'm also on Twitter at Sid Alpha, and that's pretty much it. I pretty much wherever you go, just plug in Sid Alpha, and if my Orthrus shows up, that's me.
Yeah, awesome, Sid. Yeah, I'm a viewer, and you do good work. So glad to have you. Very good perspective. Nasmer, if you want to speak to your media and stuff.
Yeah, so on YouTube, I go by Nasma1 because unfortunately a French ASMR channel managed to nab the name from under me. Just
It's
simple
rough.
Nasma, even though my channel's 8 years older.
And
On Twitter, it'll be Nasma, and on Twitch as well. The plan is with the YouTubes to make a cyberpunk critique, not a flame in the game, but a critique to show it wasn't really where I still expected it to be. That'll be in the near future, probably 2077. That'll launch, and then go back to just talking about games, hopefully showcasing stuff.
yeah, yeah. Also some very good commentary and investigative stuff, and around gaming from your channel as well. I want to say so. Definitely ones to watch, as well as Dragon's Treasure, who was with us before, and Mello is also on X. So if you guys want to follow them, take a look. So I've been Jdawg for GBAMFS. We are a gamer consumer protection org. We also, we have a broad focus. So we're looking to incentivize the good work in the gaming industry. At some point, fund indies and that sort of thing, and take a critical view and take it to those who are bad actors and disserving the gaming community, and just be an advocate for gamers. That's what the Brotherhood is there for. We're here to stick up for ourselves, our interest, and make sure that at the end of the day, we're all happy. We want happy devs. We want to be happy gamers, and we want to get the best games we possibly can. So, I'm really appreciative of everyone of joining the table and who attended the chat. And we look forward to future ones where we can dig into the issues that we need to and get the gamers' work done. All right. You all have a good night. Once again, thanks for joining me on the roundtable, Sid and Nasmer.
Amazing.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You have a good one. Bye-bye.